working on some technological issues here happening. So I can't see Ramie just in case we step over each other a little bit. But Ramie, it's been a little bit, man. How was your weekend? How is your moving process going?
Nick, I can barely hear you, my man. I don't know what's going on. I heard the station loud and clear, but now I can barely hear you. I got you now. There he is. There's my guy. There he is. What's up? It's moving, Nick. It's moving. And, and that's never pleasant. Never pleasant. It's never fun. Has moving ever been fun? No, it has not. And because I was moving, I'm not even gonna lie. I'm always very transparent. Like a lot of radio hosts, they'll act like they know everything all the time, and they're up to the news, like it's up to the minute, up to the second. They know everything that's going on. I'll tell you when I get behind. But while I was dealing with all the moving stuff, because of course, Nick, the movers showed up while I'm walking out my door to go to work, because that's when movers show up, right? While I'm dealing with all the moving stuff, all hell broke loose in the NBA. I didn't hear about any of this until I got out of my car and opened up my computer and saw the Slack thread between that we have here as a show. And good Lord, man, like everything happened while I was dealing with movers. I can't even keep up with everything that happened while I was dealing with the movers. Don't you love it, though? Don't you love legal tampering?
Of conversations, and just about an hour ago or so, as Ramie mentioned, a big-time trade happened in the NBA. DeJounte Murray is actually now a member of the Atlanta Hawks. He gets traded from the Spurs to the Hawks. In return, the Hawks send San Antonio Danilo Gallinari, 3 first-round draft picks, and a draft swap. Now, Wojnarowski brought us some more details here from ESPN. He tweeted out, the Hawks are sending a 2023 first-round pick. That is from Charlotte. So next year's first-round pick is from Charlotte, not Atlanta. And then they will also send their own 2025 and 2027 first-round picks. Zach Lowe has jumped in, and he has said that those 2 picks are completely unprotected. So when you look at this deal, Ramie, Danilo Gallinari, 3 first-round picks. That is the 2023 first-round pick from Charlotte, the 2025 and 2027 first-round picks from Atlanta that are unprotected, and they also will be able to pick swap in 2026. Those are the details. Ramie, your thoughts on this deal?
That's a lot for DeJounte Murray, man, isn't it? That's a lot. And I know he's an up-and-comer, and I know last year he kind of broke through, made the All-Star game. But, man, and every year I seem to be amazed by what teams will give up, whether in a trade or via free agency. We'll talk about the Jalen Brunson deal later on. Every offseason, I'm amazed by what teams will give up for what they think is the guy or one of the guys that's going to take them to the next level and put them in the picture as a contender or whatever the case might be. This is a lot to give up for DeJounte Murray in my eyes, Nick.
You know, I think, again, Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140 on this Wednesday, a very busy Wednesday in the NBA, including some Kings news, which we'll get to in less than 10 minutes from right now. But when you look at this deal, Ramie, I actually think it's a good deal for Atlanta.
You do?
Yeah, I mean, Murray is 25 years old. He's an all-star. When you look at what he can do defensively, he's a playmaker. He can score. He can rebound. I think he's a very, very nice fit alongside Trae Young. Let's be honest. You know, Trae Young is not going to be making anybody forget about great defensive players in the history of the NBA. And he needs somebody who can pick up the slack in the backcourt. And also, here's the thing. If Trae Young truly wants to embrace off the ball, I think this could bring his game to the next level. I always go back to what the Hawks did when Shanky first took over that program, right? They went out, they drafted Trae Young. They went out and they drafted Kevin Huerter. And I always thought, you know, he came from Golden State, Shanky did. He comes from Golden State originally. And I thought, you know, when he, not to say that Trae Young is Steph Curry, but when he drafted Young and Huerter, I always thought that was his attempt at drafting someone close to Steph Curry and Klay Thompson as far as game goes. And what we've seen from Steph is his willingness to play off of the ball. Ramie, I think if Trae Young embraces this and says to himself, I'm going to play off the ball a little bit and let Murray be that playmaker and that defender, I think you can get a lot more out of Young moving forward with this move.
It's a big if, though, isn't it? Because if Trae Young is willing to buy into this and play off, because that's a guy who likes the ball in his hands and likes being that dude on that basketball team. You know what I mean? And now it's going to be a little bit more of playing off ball, sharing that spotlight, sharing the scoring load. He's a guy who very much, it seems to me, wants to be the number one guy. The question that immediately popped into my head, Nick, and salary cap ramifications aside, is would you have done this if you're the Sacramento Kings and you know DeJounte Murray is on the market?
I mean,
three first-round picks and a player off your roster.
I mean, I'd look into it for sure. I mean, I'd make that deal if it was just 3 first-round picks and, you know, a player off my roster if I were getting protections on those picks. I mean, let's not forget, this is really the question to me from San Antonio's point of view. First of all, why now? Murray has 2 years left on his contract. It's a team-friendly deal. I don't really know what the urgency was from San Antonio. I don't know if there was some behind closed doors arguments or back and forths between the organization and the player. I'm not really sure why they felt they had to pull the trigger right now, because this trade, to me, it's not a great deal for San Antonio when you talk about return. We could talk about the picks. The Charlotte pick might be okay. Who knows? They're probably bringing Bridges back. But if you make that deal, you know, Atlanta, you would think if Atlanta now has Young and Murray in the backcourt and they continue to make moves, which is what I would expect, if that's the case, then those Atlanta picks, I don't think, are going to be great for San Antonio. So to me, it's a very kind of urgent trade by San Antonio. And as far as when you wrap the Kings into this, Ramie, that's why I would be more hesitant to do the deal if I were Sacramento, because I think those future picks with the Kings are more than likely going to be much more valuable than those picks that you're going to get from the Hawks.
What are you trying to say here? What are you trying to say? The Knicks are going to be, or the Kings are going to be drafting near the top for a while? They're going to be in the lottery for a minute?
I wouldn't say at the top.
Okay.
I wouldn't say in the all I'm saying is this: Atlanta in the Eastern Conference, Sacramento in the Western Conference. The West is going to be incredibly difficult this upcoming year. It might be incredibly difficult the next 2 or 3 years. I just think the value of Kings picks are much higher than the value of Hawks picks.
That's fair. That's fair. I just think that's a lot. Maybe I'm selling DeJounte Murray short, but that seems like a lot to give up for that guy. But you're right in that Atlanta's picks shouldn't be that high or that high of value if things work out the way that they think they're going to work out in Atlanta with this new pairing of Young and Murray.
What's interesting to me too about this trade, again, DeJounte Murray gets traded to Atlanta. We're talking about it right now in Cattles and Ramie. We'll have your Kings news coming up in just a few short minutes, about 3-4 minutes from right now. But the other part of this trade that kind of makes me interested is San Antonio. Again, I don't think they're getting this incredible package. Now, maybe San Antonio feels like the Hawks are going to be bad. And by the time you get to 25 and 27, those picks are unprotected. And, you know, you might be picking in the top 5. And that would be absolutely fantastic for them if that's how it falls together. But the other part of this is, you know, you've got Popovich. And Popovich is 70-some-odd years old. I don't think he has a long time left in this league. And this deal to me kind of screams a complete rebuild, a complete reset. This is almost, Ramie, you could actually question whether or not the Spurs are focused on tanking next year for Wembanyama, who is that, you know, generational talent everybody's talking about who might go first overall next season or next year in the draft. You wonder, you know, are the Spurs, it seems like they're throwing up the white flag. I would think Gallinari is going to be either spun in another trade or probably bought out and will become a free agent. So to me, this is kind of the Spurs saying we're completely hitting the reset button.
Which is weird because it seemed like they were in the middle of a rebuild now. And DeJounte Murray was kind of one of the centerpieces of that. It feels like they started one and never really completed it. And maybe it is that Greg Popovich is on his way out and they want a fresh new start or have a fresh new mind that's in the building already, that has an idea for what he wants to do in the post Greg Popovich era. But Nick, doesn't it seem like they were right in the middle of a rebuild already? That DeJounte Murray was kind of a centerpiece of.
Yeah, you would think that he'd be the leader kind of the next generation. But
like
instead,
you said, 25 years old, 2 years left on the contract. Like it doesn't make a ton of sense as far as the timeline when you talk about San Antonio to hit the reset button again at this point in where that franchise is at with the rebuild that they started 2 or 3 years ago.
You look at the Atlanta side of this, I would say that they're obviously not done. This could make Kevin Huerter that much more available. I would imagine he is on the block now because Huerter is going to be blocked by DeJounte Murray. So Huerter is going to be available. We've heard about John Collins. I don't think Atlanta is done. They obviously want to reshape this roster around Trae Young. They were not happy with what they did last year. So we'll continue to talk about this trade, but we also want to get into the Sacramento Kings because I just mentioned Kevin Huerter. This all might tie in somehow to Sacramento and what the Kings do here over the next few days with Monte McNair. We'll get into that. We'll get your reaction on this trade as well. A lot more, and I mean a lot more coming up on Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140.
It's the new spot for local sports talk in the afternoon. Cattles and Ramie. Sacktown Sports 1140.
Don't forget, YouTube, Sacktown Sports 1140. See lots of you jumping on. A lot of you have joined us over the past couple of weeks. Let's keep those numbers strong. Don't forget to click the good old thumbs up button, like us, and subscribe. That helps us grow the channel. I want to remind you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Nick. Has anybody commented on my camera angle yet? Because it's not the best.
Well, the chat is disabled for the live stream, so
okay, good.
I'm not really sure what the people are thinking right now. But
okay, good. That's a good thing today.
Before we get into the Kings conversation and some news about Donte DiVincenzo that came out just a little while ago, I want to remind you that Sacktown Sports 1140 will be live and representing in Summer League Vegas Basketball World, July 8th to 13th. Carmichael Dave, Jason Ross will be down there in Vegas along with Frankie Cardicelli, SacktownSports.com, Chris Watkins of SacktownSports.com as well. The coverage of the 2022 NBA Summer League brought to you by Power Business Technologies. Find them online at powercopiers.com. Again, so we've got your coverage from pillar to post down there at the Summer League in Vegas, following every single step of Keegan Murray's early career here in Sacramento. Speaking of Sacramento, Ramie, a very interesting and I think a surprising move for a lot of Kings fans happened right before we came on the air, and that's Donte DiVincenzo. Now, I know that you're moving here from Milwaukee, so I'll give you the quick gist of this DiVincenzo relationship. The Kings have liked Donte DiVincenzo going back all the way a couple of years ago. They've been linked with Donte. You know this because Donte was in Milwaukee.
They made the trade for him, yeah.
Right. They made the trade for him, and they end up, that kind of falls apart. The NBA gets in the way. So then, you kind of circle back later on, and they make the deal sending Marvin Bagley out to bring DiVincenzo in. And myself included, I would say, expected Donte DiVincenzo to be on this roster this year. Now, I do want to say before I get your thoughts and let people know what happened with Dante today, I don't necessarily rule out the idea that DiVincenzo will stay here with the Kings. I do think that's at least an option on the table, but the Kings today decided to not extend a qualifying offer to DiVincenzo, which, Ramie, that makes him officially an unrestricted free agent. So he is out there for anybody to talk to, anybody to sign. What do you make of that move? Did that surprise you that DiVincenzo did not get that qualifying offer?
I was surprised because this is the kind of guy that the Kings need. That and where they don't have a lot of depth. This is a guard who can shoot, who can guard who can guard a couple different positions. I was with you, Nick. I thought Dante DiVincenzo was certainly back in the fold with the Kings having the right to first refusal and able to retain him if they wanted to. This is an odd move to me, and I don't know exactly what led to it. And honestly, I think Dante DiVincenzo is exactly what the Kings need. I think that if they go out into free agency and with what they have available to them as far as the mid-level exception and whatever else money is there, you're going to be shopping for a Dante DiVincenzo if you go out into the free agent market. You had this guy in the fold if you wanted him, and for at least, like you said, Nick, who knows what happens, but at least for now, they said, nah, we'll pass. And I don't really understand that.
Yeah, the first thought that I had was, this means you're not getting anything in return for DiVincenzo, right? I mean, you're waving goodbye to him for the time being, which means, as you said, Ramie, you can't kind of hold him on your roster and try to maybe make a move and send him elsewhere and get something back. You're just letting him walk. You're letting him walk for nothing, which means if you look back at the 2018 draft, you can now say you got nothing in return from that draft. The year that you had a chance to draft Luka Doncic, you not only drafted Marvin Bagley, and that didn't work out, you then traded Bagley for DiVincenzo, and now he's an unrestricted free agent. It is interesting. I don't know if this is from Dante's side or if it's from the Kings side. And the reason why I asked that, and by the way, Woj just said on ESPN that the Hawks are still engaged in John Collins conversations. So Collins is still on the block after they've traded for DeJounte Murray. As I said, I think this is just the beginning for the Hawks. But when you look at DiVincenzo, the one thing that we have to highlight, Ramie, is the fact that towards the tail end of last season, DiVincenzo did not like how he was being used. And he was not a fan of, he wasn't starting. He wasn't a fan of the rotations and all of that. And that got public. And so I don't know if this is DiVincenzo and DiVincenzo's camp saying, look, we're not playing those games that we played last year. I want my guy to be somewhere where he has a chance to start or play some major minutes. And maybe Monty could not commit to that. So they kind of came to this agreement and said, fine, Dante, if you think you can go out there and find a team, then go find a team and sign with that team. If you can't, then we're interested in bringing you back here and having you be a piece of the puzzle.
I don't think Dante DiVincenzo is going to find a team where, at least not a contender, not an upper tier team where he's going to be a starter. Do you? And if that's what he if that's what he wanted with the Kings, then obviously that opportunity was not there with the young backcourt that they have, and they seem to plan on building around. If he was insistent on being a starter or having starter type of minutes, that just wasn't there with the Kings. But I don't think that'll be there with many teams around the NBA if that's what he's looking for. So if that's the case, Nick, even better chance of what you talked about, which is him circling back around to the Kings and realizing this isn't so bad a situation. And by the way, him not being happy with the role that he had, that goes back to Milwaukee too, right before they traded him. And he was coming off the injury that he suffered in the playoffs the season before, and he just wasn't playing well, Nick. He was half a step slow. The shot wasn't there. He wasn't able to keep up with guys that he was trying to defend, which you understand coming off the type of injury that he had, but he just wasn't the player that he was pre-injury. You would think ramping up to that, but he didn't seem to understand that he wasn't back to being that player yet, and was not pleased with the way that the Bucks were using him either.
He's Ramie. I'm Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140. And look, some people might say, well, Nick, if that was kind of the handshake deal that Monty had with Dante, then why wouldn't the Kings, have that qualifying offer? That gets me to my next possibility. The Kings might be shuffling some money around here because maybe, just maybe, Monty has something going on, right? That there's this possibility. We know they've been talking to the Hawks about John Collins. Some people nationally have said that they're not talking as much to Atlanta right now than they were before the draft. Our own Carmichael Dave has stood by this. He stood pat, and he continues to say, no, Collins is still on the table, and the Kings continue to talk to the Hawks about John Collins. So, maybe, just maybe, this is a situation where Monty knows he has a chance of making a move and bringing somebody in who would be a definite upgrade over Dante DiVincenzo. And he also knows that there's going to be some money being thrown around. So he can't hold that qualifying offer with Dante because he's concerned that would take away this possibility, this option he may have. Because if a week or two from now, if we find out, Monty makes a trade, he brings somebody in, and it's a two guard who's going to play 35 minutes a night, then you look at it and you go, okay, we understand the Dante DiVincenzo situation.
Doesn't the Murray trade have the feeling of like the first domino to fall, that there's more that's going to go down in Atlanta, and maybe I would think likely a John Collins trade, or am I jumping to conclusions there, Nick? And because it seemed like that smoke was kind of clearing up around a Collins trade. I think if anything, the Murray acquisition only heats those talks back up if they've cooled off, and he might be the next domino to fall in Atlanta, and maybe available to the Sacramento Kings. We heard all that buzz around the Kings and Collins last week leading up to the draft.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it now, and it makes a lot of sense. Collins is still on the block. Again, Woj just said he's likely going to be dealt at some point here. I think Kevin Huerter is now expendable for the Hawks. It's quite possible that, both of those guys could come in as a combination trade package. You'd be giving out, maybe the Hawks weren't excited about what they were getting in return for Collins. So they said, you know what, we're going to wait on this, and maybe we can, combine Huerter and Collins and get more for that trade package and trading them individually. I have no idea, but it is interesting. And the other option, of course, for DiVincenzo and the Kings is maybe, just maybe, Monty said, look, we're looking at other things. We want to try to do some other things. When we have a better gauge as far as financially what we can do, then we'll have the conversation with you. But again, when you let him walk, it makes it less likely that you're going to be able to come together on a deal, because now he's a free agent, and now you've got to look at what cap space and what options you may have. So it is a surprising move. I think most of us, if not all of us, thought DiVincenzo would be a part of this team, not necessarily as a starter.
What was the trade for, Nick? If you're just going to let Dante walk, what exactly was that trade for when you went and acquired him during the season? Because it wasn't for last season. You knew last season was a lost cause when you made that deal. You were acquiring Dante for this reset or whatever it is that we're calling it here this offseason leading into the 2023 season. Like, what was that trade for? What to what ends did those means serve in that trade? You got nothing out of it, basically, as we sit here today.
Well, I think it was a stab at Dante DiVincenzo, see how he would work out in this system. Again, you probably made the trade when you made it thinking he was going to work out. If it's on his side, he didn't like the rotations and he wanted to play more minutes than you were willing to give him, then unfortunately that's how this works, right? You got to bring him in, you got to see how he fits, and you've got to see if you guys can work out that relationship. If he and his representation went back to the Kings and said, this isn't working out for us, there's not much that you can do. At that point, you got to kind of cut the cord, which is maybe what's happening here. But maybe it's not. Again, Sean Cunningham, our friend of Fox, says that there's still interest on the Kings side to bring him back. So I don't think this is necessarily goodbye just yet. It might be some maneuvering and hoping that you can land a bigger name and maybe need some of that space, some of that money. So we'll have to wait and see how it all comes together. Your thoughts on Dante DiVincenzo not being extended the qualifying offer? He is now officially an unrestricted free agent. 1-800-920-1140 is the phone number. The text line is 916-339-1140. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Nick C Radio, and at Ramie is tweeting. That's RAMIE is tweeting. We'll continue our conversation. You're welcome. About the Atlanta Hawks deal, about Dante DiVincenzo being able to walk away from the Kings. And also, we've got a James Harden update that might surprise you.
Oh, yeah. Here's that.
Sacramento has a new tag team in the afternoons.
You're talking to the original tag team of ugly pukes here.
It's Cattles. It's Ramie. Sacktown Sports 1140.
Yeah. Cattles and Ramie with you on a Wednesday. Get to your calls and your reaction on Donte DiVincenzo not being extended a qualifying offer, which makes him an unrestricted free agent. So the Kings, for all intents and purposes, for right now, have waved goodbye to DiVincenzo. Does that mean another move is on its way? We'll have to wait and see. I know a lot of Kings fans are skeptical because, they've gone through this before. Oh, well, there's another shoe to drop, and then that other shoe never drops, and it's just frustrating. But maybe Monty will change things up. Don't forget, you can text us at 916-339-1140. Also, don't forget that it's time to check out Coastside Medical Clinic, dedicated to providing breakthrough remedies for men. I want to get to James Harden, the latest news on the Beard and what he might be doing with the Philadelphia 76ers. Also, we've got to talk about the New York Knicks kind of losing their minds over the last couple of days. And with today's news about DeJounte Murray, I think it looks even worse. But
what do you mean losing their minds? Like they ever had minds to start with over there in New York? That's
fair point.
That's been a dysfunctional organization for what, at least a good 20 years. The Knicks have been pretty dysfunctional.
Fair point. And as they say, Ramie, it starts at the top.
Bing bong.
Yeah. Bing bong. Let's go to Doug. He wants to talk about the Kings. What's up, Doug?
I was just listening to you guys about DiVincenzo not being offered the qualifying offer, and I remember watching McNair being interviewed after the draft, and he was talking about the picks and everything. He was talking about that 37th pick that went to Dallas.
Yeah.
And he said that it was not over, that there was parts of that trade that could not be discussed at the time. And that just makes me wonder whether or not there was some sort of deal that was made, maybe a Holmes to Dallas for Hardaway Jr., or maybe in the works that we just don't know about yet.
Let me jump in, Doug. I appreciate the phone call. I think what Monty was referencing that night was the fact that the trade had not been finalized by the NBA just yet, and there were multiple picks involved. Not that there were other teams involved or other names involved. He was just waiting to have that deal finalized. From what I have read, there's absolutely nothing going on beyond what we had on draft night for that 37th pick. And Doug, that was a move that I did not like. That was a move. I thought that the Kings sold the 37th pick in the draft and was not a big fan of that because there was talent left on the board, including Hardy and Liddell. We talked about that the day after the draft last week. But they decided they wanted to keep the roster spot open. So, we'll see what happens. And again, we brought this up last segment. You never know. I mean, the Hawks have been talking with the Kings. Does this deal that has been talked about back and forth between the Hawks and the Kings grow? Does it expand? Are you now looking at maybe Collins and Kevin Huerter? There are things that you can do to make that money work. I mean, I know Carmichael Dave just tweeted this out a few moments ago. He's playing the old trade machine game. But you could put, Harrison Barnes and Rashawn Holmes and Justin Holiday, Holmes, and Barnes. That gives you enough money to bring in Collins and Huerter. And obviously the Kings would also have to throw a few draft picks in there. But just if you're wondering, and I don't want to go too far down this road, but if you're wondering if the Kings do have the tools to expand a possible Atlanta trade and maybe bring back a guard because DeJounte Murray is now a Hawk, they at least have the tools. They have the means to get there. Will they get there? I'm not sure. Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140. Ramie, let's jump to James Harden for a minute or two here. He has officially opted out of his contract. Now, people are seeing all of these opt-outs, and they're thinking, ooh, free agency now. Ooh, James Harden's a free agent. Well, yes, he is technically a free agent, but according to pretty much everybody, Harden is doing this so he can re-sign with the 76ers, maybe take a little less money. Adrian Wojnarowski tweeted this out about an hour ago. Maybe take a little less money to allow the flexibility for the 76ers to go out and spend $10 million instead of $6 million. I don't want to glaze people's eyes, but there's two different mid-level exceptions in the NBA. Mm-hmm. There is the taxpayer mid-level exception and the non-taxpayer. The non-taxpayer, which is called the full, is $10.3 million. That's what the Kings have. The Kings have the $10.3 million or so mid-level exception. The taxpayer mid-level exception is $6.4 million. So if Harden agrees to take a little bit less and they massage the numbers, that would allow the 76ers to offer somebody like, say, I don't know, PJ Tucker. They could offer him 3 years for $30 million versus offering PJ Tucker 3 years for like $18 million. That's the difference. And, according to a lot of reports out there, Harden is looking to take a little bit less to help the team financially bring somebody else in, Ramie.
Yeah, I saw Windhorst today saying that because it's been rumored that PJ Tucker has already picked the 76ers as the team that he'll sign with. And Windhorst said that somebody's going to have to take a pay cut, and James Harden seems like a likely candidate, and brought up the possibility of him opting out and giving a more team-friendly deal here to allow them to make this PJ Tucker signing happen. And man, that's a big move for the 76ers, and a big move by James Harden. PJ Tucker, where that guy goes, much like me, Nick, where that guy goes, success seems to follow. Hey. You know what I mean? He wherever he goes, victories seem to happen. Like the W's follow PJ Tucker, even though he's not the superstar player. He's not going to make the All-Star game or an All-NBA team. But the dude, he contributes to winning, and I think that's a big signing and big move by James Harden to take the pay cut, or we think to take the pay cut to allow them to make that happen. Now, you know what? James Harden should take a pay cut based on what we saw from James Harden.
I was going to say
the end of last year. You know what I mean?
I was going to say that this paints Harden as the hero, but let's be honest, he's not getting a ton of money from elsewhere, right? I mean, he's going to get paid the most money from Philadelphia, and he knows that. Philadelphia
I saw a video
knows
of him working out today, Nick.
Oh, yeah.
I saw a video of him working out today. Yeah. He's back.
Hitting a bunch of open shots in a gym. Yes, he's – watch out. Here he comes. By the way, the other bit of news I wanted to attack here for a minute, Jalen Brunson. Look,
what?
I like Jalen Brunson. I like him a lot. I liked him coming out of college. I was surprised he fell to the second round when he did for Dallas. But the fact that the New York Knicks are literally trading players to shed contracts to get the money to pay Jalen Brunson reportedly $110 million over 4 years. I'm sorry, Ramie, but Jalen Brunson, you're making.
What is happening?
You're hiring his dad and you're trading players away to pay him $27 million a year.
What is happening? What again, every offseason, I'm reminded that NBA teams are just out of their minds. They're delusional in who they think makes them a contender and is worth the resources that they have at their disposal, or that they don't have at their disposal, and they have to trade good players to free up those resources. You're doing all this for Jalen Brunson? Really, man? Like the Knicks. But man, Nick, do I love watching the Knicks screw things up, man. I don't know what it is. There's something about the Knicks that, you know how Stephen A is with the Dallas Cowboys? That's how I am about the New York Knicks and Knicks fans. I just love watching that thing burn. I love watching that dumpster fire eternally burn out there in Manhattan. It's one of my favorite things in all of sports, because Knicks fans, for some reason, they let themselves believe every year. Did you ever see or hear? I got to get my producer from here, and I'm in the same building as him, so I might be able to get a quick turnaround on this. We used to play it all the time on my show back in Milwaukee. The reaction of Knicks fans after winning the first game of the season against the Celtics last year, not a playoff game, game one
Remember
of the
it well.
NBA season, and they absolutely lost their mind. So I love watching Knicks fans get these highs and then just get slapped down off the top of the mountain and tumble down painfully and hilariously for the rest of us. It's great. Go ahead and sign Jalen Brunson for all that money. Please do, New York Knicks. I bask in it. I love it.
And what makes it even worse, Ramie, is the fact that you have DeJounte Murray traded today for 3 first-round picks and a pick swap. The New York Knicks have 11 first-round picks coming up in the next couple of years. And DeJounte Murray makes, I think, $17 million and $19 million in the next 2 years. Like, if you're trying to bring in a guard, why don't you go after DeJounte Murray instead of paying Jalen Brunson $27 million a year?
Yes.
It's just, it's just typical. And by the way, you better hope R.J. Barrett becomes a superstar. Because if R.J. Barrett does not become a superstar, you're going to pay him a ton of money. You're going to have two guys who are not superstars making big money, getting in the way. I like Jalen Brunson, but I do not get that whatsoever. 916-339-1140 is the text line. 1-800-920-1140 is the phone number. Call us, text us. Also, don't forget that if it's time to get a new mattress, shop local at Sleep First. He's Ramie, I'm Cattles. It's Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports, 1140 on a Wednesday.
Cattles and Ramie. Cattles and Ramie. Sacktown Sports 1140.
You can follow me on Twitter at Nick C Radio. You can follow Ramie on Twitter as well at Ramie is tweeting. Again, you spell the name Ramie. Ramie is tweeting. Before we get to more basketball, more Kings news, some smaller things to take note of happening with the Kings and Monte McNair over the last day or so. We have what they call in this business a split squad game happening here. If you're watching on YouTube, again, check out YouTube, youtube.com, Sacktown Sports 1140. Don't forget to click the thumbs up button. Also subscribe, trying to grow the channel and grow the Sacktown Sports brand so we can continue to give you what you want, which is more coverage of the Kings and other local teams here. But we're having this split squad game today, so to speak, and we're going to have one tomorrow. Ramie's in Milwaukee because he is moving. He was literally moving when we were doing our pre-show meeting today with the loudest background noise in the I don't know what in the world was happening behind Ramie. But
do you want to know?
There sounded like there was a lot.
I was packing when you called, and then about halfway through our meeting, so that the dog wasn't going nuts and getting tripped over while the movers were there, I had to get him over to the girlfriend's house. I was literally packing when you called and then going to my car, from my car up to my girlfriend's apartment, from my girlfriend's apartment back down to the car, because that was the only time that I could do it was during our meeting. So sorry about that. My bad. I was trying to multitask.
There's a lot happening, including we lost Ramie not once but twice during the call.
That was in the stairwell up and down to my girlfriend's apartment. There's no reception up there.
Yeah, bad cell area. So, but this was at least planned on Ramie's end.
I'll tell you, very focused. I have to. I'm normally a very focused individual. I'm just, you know what it is, Nick. You did this not too long ago. I'm all over the place with this move right now.
Yes, I went completely across the country, which was even crazier. Which brings me to what I was supposed to be. So I was supposed to be across the country right now. I was supposed to be in Virginia Beach, hanging out with friends, getting ready for the 4th of July weekend, and bashing it out like crazy. But instead, on Monday, I spent my entire day canceling everything. I had to cancel the flights. I had to cancel the hotel. I had to cancel the rental car. And my dog, Sammy, hurt her back, as timing would have it. Yes, as timing would have it.
I thought it was the leg. It's the back.
It's the back. So Friday morning, I was hanging out on the couch before coming into the office doing some work on my computer. And what happens is she usually leaves the room with me, and we let Kelly sleep in a little bit because I get up earlier. And Sammy usually chills with me on the couch as I do work. She just kind of lays there and falls asleep. But on Friday, she was trying to get up on the couch, and she slipped on her bed that was on the floor between the living room table and the couch. And so her abdomen slammed into the couch, and she grabbed onto the couch with her front legs to pull herself up. And over the next couple of days, Kelly and I noticed that she was kind of laboring. She was not walking around as smoothly. She wasn't running or jogging at all. She wasn't jumping up and getting excited. And I saw her, she was sitting down kind of side saddled. And when she tried to stand up, her back left leg was like quivering, like she was really working to try to get to that position.
Oh.
So we tried to get her to the vets on Sunday. That couldn't work. Everybody was like, you got at least a 5-hour wait, if not longer. And so we got her in on Monday, and they gave her x-rays. And so we knew she had some arthritis in her back from a very young age. So that's obviously still there. She also has like some bone spurs on her spine, which we did not know. And also apparently she's a Jack Russell Australian cattle mix. And apparently her breed, they also suffer from discs that kind of degenerate.
Oh.
So her L2, L3 has some degeneration to it. And on top of that, I think because of the crash course with the couch, the entire kind of area where the disc degeneration is happening, it was all inflamed and swollen. So they gave us pretty much puppy ibuprofen, doggy ibuprofen, and told us that she cannot, she's not allowed to run or jump for the next 4 to 6 weeks.
How do you tell a dog that?
Exactly. So you can't. So we decided that we could not board her because we don't know anybody, well enough just yet here to kind of be like, hey, take our dog for the next week and make sure she doesn't run or jump and feed her every 12 hours this medicine. So we decided to pull the plug on the vacation and the trip. And then yesterday, she started to run around and get excited. And I thought she pulled the okey doke on us. I was like, she completely faked this injury because she knew we were leaving her with a bunch of other dogs, and and as soon as we canceled everything, she was moving around better. I'm like, this dog's smarter than we thought.
Well, was she headed to doggy daycare? Was that the plan?
Yes, she was going to go to one of those
okay.
doggy daycare
right.
boarding places, but
Yeah, she didn't want to go there.
So, yeah, but you're right.
Okie doke.
Like,
yeah, she got you.
You can't tell the dog, right? So there's already been a couple of times she's feeling better because she's on the medicine, and also I think it's amazing. She knew, right? I mean, she knew she wasn't feeling right. So on Saturday and Sunday, and even most of Friday, she wasn't as active jumping around going crazy because she knew she wasn't feeling right. So I think the inflammation that we saw on Monday probably was much worse over the weekend, and it started to finally calm down. And with the medication, I think it's probably subsided a decent amount. So now she's back to kind of like running around and jumping. And Kelly and I have to be like, no, don't. And she's getting all
still
confused.
On the IR. You have to explain to her she's still on the IR.
Yeah.
It's not time for action yet. So
no,
are you going to have to get the little doggy steps to get her up and onto the couch? And have you seen those little steps you can buy for your dog?
It's a good idea. I did not even think about
that.
They
can't get up on the couch or the ramps. They have ramps too.
What we've been doing is just like we've been doing elevator dog. Where like if she comes over to the couch, we just lift her up and we pick her up and put her on the couch. We pick her up and put her on the bed when she wants to get on the bed.
Not an option with my dog. There's not an option with my dog.
Yeah, but those steps are a good idea. Anyway, so that's why I'm still here in Sacramento this week and weekend. And Ramie is in Milwaukee. Ramie will be back here in Sacramento full time. He'll be an actual living member of the Sacramento community.
He'll be a resident of Sacramento, California. Got an apartment and everything.
A week from today. Midtown? Is that what you did?
Midtown. Yes, sir.
Okay. We won't. We obviously will not tell people the address, but he Midtown. Good.
Yeah, please don't.
Good spot. I see us.
I liked it. I spent a lot of time there when I came out for the visit last month, and I'm a city guy, Nick, and I like. Not like crazy nightlife. I don't need dance clubs and things like that. I got the knees of a 60-year-old. But I do like just some chill bars and restaurants or places to go perform comedy within walking distance. I want to get in my car everywhere I go. So Midtown seemed like the spot.
Yeah, it's a good spot. I'm sure we'll hang out there. I already told you there's a couple places I got to take you to. Let's jump back to sports. Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140. Let's quickly give you some small kind of news tidbits from the Kings world. First of all, Trey Lyles looks like he's going to be coming back. He's going to be returning. Makes a ton of sense. Lyles played some really good basketball late in the season when he came over. He gives you some positional versatility. He at least tries on the defensive end. It's like $2.6 million. So Lyles will be back. Neemias Queta has been offered a two-way contract. He's going to play during the summer for the Kings. Again, he's a big man from Portugal. He's a developing big man, hopefully a rim protector, has some really good feet. So, I know a number of Kings fans love Queta, but he's been offered a two-way. It looks like he's going to hang around. And the California Classic roster has officially been released. Again, this is not the Summer League, but the interesting names here, obviously, Keegan. Keegan is going to be playing. He'll be out there. Jai Smith from Overtime Elite in the G League, he's going to be out there. Jared Roden from Seton Hall, he's going to be out there. The two-way contract the Kings brought in on draft night, Keon Ellis from Alabama, he will be out there. Jariah Horn is another guy that they bring in to take a look at. So, obviously everybody's going to be paying attention to Keegan Murray. This is on July 2nd and 3rd, this Saturday and Sunday. Everybody will be paying attention to Keegan, but I would keep an eye on Keon Ellis as well. I'm reading a lot about him, and I'm not going to tell you he's going to be like an all-star. He's crazy good just yet, but he does look like somebody who could be a depth piece and could be a find as an undrafted guy by Monty McNair. So there are some quick tidbits and notes about the Kings and what they're doing over the last day or so. We keep our eye on Twitter. We'll continue with all the NBA talk, all the Kings talk. Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140.
Just two guys rubbing elbows, talking sports, and lots of other stuff.
They always keep you on edge.
That's really crazy interesting.
It's Cattles and Ramie. Sacktown Sports 1140.
So we're less than 24 hours away from the legal tampering period in the NBA, which makes no sense. Everybody knows these guys tamper. My favorite tampering story is when LeBron was like having dinner with Anthony Davis like a full year or two before Davis got traded to the Lakers. It's like, I wonder what they're talking about. I'm sure they're just talking about how they love the veal at that restaurant. Like it's rather obvious there's conversations going on.
Isn't LeBron's best friend being like an agent? Isn't that just tampering in general?
No, nothing to see there, Ramie. You can nothing. You think Rich Paul might be doing something?
His business partner and best friend is an NBA agent, but no tampering there. Everything's fine. No.
Completely on the up and up. Everything is okay. Which brings me to the Jalen Brunson thing quickly, and we'll get to the Kings in a minute, whether or not Ramie and I believe they need to make a big splash this offseason. But I did see this Jalen Brunson story from Chris Haynes come out last hour saying that apparently Jalen Brunson is going to be having meetings with the Mavericks, the Knicks, and now the Miami Heat. And some people are jumping all over that saying, oh, the Heat. And I saw a very, very smart tweet. I'm trying to find it amongst these 7,000 tweets we had that popped up. But somebody tweeted out saying, look, this is the game that players play, right? Like Jalen Brunson doesn't want to be, responsible for teams being fined. The Knicks don't want to be fined for tampering. So what happens is these meetings are leaked and these players take these meetings and we all pretty much know. I mean, last night the leak was Brunson's going to the Knicks for 4 years, $110 million. Now maybe he'll do like a last second reversal, but more likely than not, the idea of him taking meetings, especially with Miami, is to try to get away from the tampering fines.
I would say real quick, fellas, this kind of sounds familiar if we want to look over at the NFL. I'm just going to leave it at that. Sounds like some farce meetings going on. Now, how you take it could be it could be detrimental to the show. So I'm just going to leave it out there.
All right.
But it's farce.
It's
farce. We should look at the NFL.
You should look at the NFL, he said. Well, the NFL, some things are going on. Let's look at the Kings, because Ramie has said this a couple of times to me off the show, and he said it to us this morning. He said, as we talk about this offseason, the Kings need to make a splash. Monty needs to make a splash. Now, before I get to Ramie's thoughts and why he believes that there should be some pressure here to have this big splash happen this offseason, just want to let people know how this works. So tomorrow at 3 p.m. our time, that will be the legal tampering start. Start your engines, which started weeks ago. And then, obviously, the Kings have the full mid-level exception, so they have $10.3 million or so to spend in free agency. They have contracts that they can trade. They've got Barnes and Holmes, and they've got Holiday. Those contracts can be easily traded for a big money player. They also have Davion Mitchell and their future picks to trade as assets. So that's really what Monty has to work with. But before I get to Ramie's thoughts about this big splash, I do want to go back to Monty on Thursday night last week after the draft, because we've all been talking about the playoff mandate, and Monty was asked on Thursday night whether or not there was a playoff mandate.
First of all, none. There's no mandate. We've been very clear what our goal is. We want to win. We want to make the playoffs, and we want to continue and stay there. But there's no mandate to do so. My job is to build, as I've said, the best team that's going to take the court this year and for years to come. And so I think Keegan is exactly that player.
Cattles, Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140. Ramie, you want to see a big splash? Tell the people why.
I don't believe him. That's why. because I
second
don't
week on the show,
it.
he's calling the GM a liar. There you go.
I mean,
Monty McNair.
aren't all GMs liars? Aren't all GMs lie? I mean, sometimes they have to lie to us, and I'm okay with that, Nick. Like, I've been lied to directly to my face in a one-on-one interview with the general manager, and knew I was being lied to, and I'm okay with it. I'm fine with that. I understand the game that we're playing here, so that's not a personal attack at Monty McNair when I say I don't believe him, but I don't believe him. I'm sorry, whether or not it was spelled out to him that there's a playoff mandate, or whether or not it's just sort of an understanding that there's a playoff mandate. Man, there's a playoff mandate from the front office, and as far as I'm concerned, Nick. Now, when I got to Sacramento, way back when, remember that?
Yeah, a long time ago. We got to go back. We got to go back.
Long time ago, I got here
last Tuesday.
Last Tuesday. I came here ready and okay with this thing taking a minute to get where it needed to go. You know, now that being said, I haven't been here for the whole 16-year drought of not making the playoffs, so maybe I have a little bit more patience in me than long-suffering Kings fans.
A little?
I don't know.
Probably
didn't
lot.
your city win an NBA championship?
Yeah, kind of. But
his original NBA city where he grew up, they won six of them. There you go.
Well, like I said, wherever I go, wins happen.
Success.
But my point is this: is I was and I said the same thing way back with the Bucks. If you do want to reference that I'd rather do this thing right than do it fast. You know what I mean? When talking about the rebuild, that's where I was a week ago. And hey, I'm no draft expert, all right, but to hear draft experts and what we were hearing from front offices all around this league in comparing Murray and Ivy with that fourth pick last week was Ivy was the guy with the higher ceiling. He was the guy with more star potential. Murray was more the sure thing. He was a better fit, and he was a guy that could help you right now. So when you went with Murray, to me, that was saying that there's the expectation of making the playoffs this year. And if that's the route that you're going to take, then man, push your chips all in. If that's what you're doing, and go make a big splash here in free agency or through a trade, whether it's a John Collins or somebody else, go make some kind of splash here and really, really push your chips in to make the playoffs. Because Nick, right now, looking at this team and people we talk to, I don't see playoff, maybe play in for this Sacramento Kings team. And that's if everything goes right. They need something that pushes them over the top and makes people go, okay, yeah, this is a team that can make the postseason this year.
I believe in Monty McNair.
It really depends on if Monty is being truthful or not, right? Like, first of all, let's talk about Keegan Murray. Last week, I already tackled the idea of Monty talking about no playoff mandate. You know, I said last Friday, and I stand by this, it's implied when you don't have a contract extension. It is inherent that you need to win games and prove your worth. And that's why you do not have a contract extension right now. If you had no playoff mandate or any kind of mandate, then you would have been given this extension along with Mike Brown coming in, allowing you to, pick Keegan Murray and make the deal last year that you made with Domas. Without a contract extension, I think we have to believe that there is some kind of mandate from ownership. I don't think they walked into Monty's office and said, make the playoffs or you're done. But the message was delivered by not talking to him about the extension. As far as Murray goes, look, if Monty truly believes, and again, we had Jake Fisher on the show a couple weeks ago, and Jake said more than 1/3, maybe more than 1/3 of the league feels like Keegan Murray is the better prospect than Jaden Ivey. So it's not just Monty McNair trying to sell the idea that Keegan was the best player available at 4. There were people in the league that believe that. Ivy's team did a fantastic job of continuing to throw out there that he was the BPA and really build the value for him. So that's a great job by his team. If Monty thought that Keegan was the best player available, then that tells us nothing as far as his mandate. Because if he does believe he was the best guy, then he was the best guy, and he stuck with his philosophy. As far as the mandate goes, that's to me where it matters. Because if there truly is no playoff mandate, and Sam Amick told us, and a lot of other people who were plugged in have told us that there is, but let's say there isn't, then you don't need to make a move. You don't need to bring in that big splash, because really what your priorities would be, make sure Fox and Sabonis continue to grow together. They did not play a ton of games together last year because of the injuries. So make sure you're developing that relationship on and off the court. Make sure Mike Brown is fitting in as the new head coach. Make sure that you're getting growth from your young players like Davion and Keegan Murray and even other guys like Cato, who I brought up last hour. That those younger guys on the roster, how are they developing? That would be the most critical part of this season. If there is a playoff mandate, Ramie, I agree with you. I mean, if there is a playoff mandate and you're looking to be not just a team that barely gets by and somehow, some way wiggles themselves into a playoff game, either as the 10th seed or the 9th seed. If you truly want to make the playoffs and be a top 6 seed, I mean, my goodness, look at the rest of the West. I mean, right now, look, we don't know what's going to happen to DeAndre Ayton, but the Suns are obviously, you'd put them ahead of the Kings right now. You'd put the Grizzlies ahead of the Kings right now. You'd put the NBA champion Golden State Warriors ahead of the Kings. The Mavericks are ahead of the Kings. The Utah Jazz, interesting. Let's see what they do. They might blow it up. But if they keep Gobert and Mitchell, you would probably put them ahead of the Kings. The Nuggets, yes, even with the trade today of Monty Morris and Will Barton and, making that deal and bringing back KCP, you still think that the Nuggets with Nikola Jokic would be ahead of them. The Timberwolves, with their run last year, you feel like they're only going to get better. They're looking to trade D'Angelo Russell. Let's see how that comes together. But the point is, I mean, you look at all of the West, and I'm not even mentioning the Pelicans, who are going to be better. The Clippers, who, if they're healthy, they are arguably a top 2 or 3 team in the West this coming year. The Spurs, they're blowing it up. Don't have to worry about it. The Lakers are clunky. The Blazers are probably going to be better, especially with the healthy Dame and Jeremy Grant coming in. And that trade has yet to be finalized. Let's not forget about that. They could still add to that deal. So, like right now, even with Domas and Fox and Murray, you're probably looking at anywhere from 10 to 12 as far as Western Conference seed. And obviously, that's not going to be good enough. So, yes, if there was a playoff mandate, Ramie, I'm with you, my man. I think you've got to make that, if there is a deal there, I don't want you to deal if there's, I don't want you to be desperate. But if there's a deal to try to take a risk and make a big splash, you do it to up this team.
Do you think there's a playoff mandate from fans, Nick? Do fans just want the playoffs, no matter how they get there, and whether or not it's the best course for the long term and actually building towards something bigger than the playoffs and being an actual contender, championship quality team someday? Do you think fans are just so hungry here in Sacramento, so starved for playoff basketball that it's just, man, just get there? I don't even care what it is. I don't care for doing it fast and not right. Just get there and give me some postseason basketball.
I'll answer that question. I'll also give you some names that I think the Kings could add during this free agency period. We'll continue our Kings conversation, and I'll throw the question out to you. As Ramie says, do you want to see a big splash at all costs? You're just tired of it? Or are you more patient? You brought in Keegan Murray. You've got Fox and Domas, Mike Brown. Give them some time. Want your thoughts. 1-800-920-1140 is the number. Text line is 916-339-1140. Again, don't forget our friends. They'll take care of you. If you need a new mattress, you want to check out Sleep First. I'll answer Ramie's question. We'll continue to talk about the Kings in 90 seconds.
Just two guys rubbing elbows, talking sports, and lots of other stuff.
They always keep you on edge. That's really crazy interesting.
It's Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140.
YouTube.com, Sacktown Sports 1140. Father Frog, Run DMG, Ray Sandoval, Sassafras, all on the chat. I see you. Sass says, make the deal only if it's not overpaying, as they talk about John Collins in the chat today. Again, you can check it out. Everybody's in there having a lot of fun. Don't forget to click the thumbs up button. Also subscribe. Help us out. We've almost doubled our YouTube subscribers in like the last month or two. So let's continue that growth. Let's continue to build the brand, as we say. Sacktown Sports 1140, giving you more content of what you want each and every day. And check out the website. A lot of work being done there at sacktownsports.com. A couple of notes here before I answer Ramie's question, whether or not I think most Kings fans say, let's just go, forget about it. We need to just break this playoff drought. We're sick of it. We have more news for you as far as the Kings. The Kings, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, are exercising the option on Chimezie. Chimezie.
Okay, awesome.
Chimezie Metu gets his option picked up. Chimezie averaged about 9 and 5.5 last year.
That's the splash I was looking for right there.
Played 21 minutes a game last season. Took a lot of threes, missed most of them. He's going to make 1.9 million. Look, I like Chimezie. I do. I like Chimezie. He brings energy. He's pretty good from the corner. He can defend a little bit. He's athletic. I think he's a good, 9th or 10th man on a team. So it's fine. I like bringing Metu back. If you're just joining us, the news of the day really for the Kings is Dante DiVincenzo did not have his qualifying offer extended to him, which makes him an unrestricted free agent. So Dante, as of right now, is not going to be a King. Trey Lyles looks like he's coming back. Metu's coming back. And, of course, Neemias Queta has been offered a two-way deal. So those three guys you can expect back. And Keegan Murray and company, the young guys are practicing as we speak right now to get ready for the California Classic this weekend. So a lot going on with the Kings. To answer your question, Ramie, and I want JJ and Chris to jump in on this as well, obviously, because they've lived here their lives. And I want their thoughts. I think the majority of Kings fans are dying to just get into the playoffs. And I think at least some of them, if not most of them, would be willing to burn some of the future just to get there. And to give you an idea, DThrill55 on Twitter at Nick C Radio, the Kings can't keep punting on seasons just to see if Mike Brown is settling in as coach. They need to make moves and win. I don't care if there's a mandate or not at Nick C Radio. Now, first of all, I am not saying the Kings should punt on the season. I've never said that. I want them to win as much as anybody else does. There's no punting the season. I'm not saying let's tank, baby. It's not tank, Tank City, USA. You've got Domas, you've got Fox, you now have Keegan Murray. What I'm saying is, and this is what I tweeted to DThrill55, if there's a deal to make to bring in a big fish, then you make the deal. But I don't want Monty acting out of desperation. I don't want you burning 4 or 5 years of assets and making this crazy trade so you can be stuck in the 6th or 7th spot in the West for the next 3 years. And I know I said this going back when I first got here, and some people gave me blowback, and I couldn't care less. I still feel this way. I understand getting to the playoffs is crucial. We all want the playoffs. Trust me. I want the playoffs. Ramie wants them. Everybody that works here at the station wants them. We want the playoffs. We want the postseason. But being stuck at, the 6th or 7th seed for the next 4 or 5 years is not the answer. It's better than what you've been the last 16. But I'm telling you, once you get to the playoffs, after you're there for like a year or maybe 2, that's going to wear off. And you're going to go, okay, now what? What's next? Trust me. So if you make a move that's going to handcuff you for 4 or 5 years down the road, what I'm saying is I would not be, acting in desperation to make that move because I do not want to be stuck at 6 or 7. I want to be able to not only get to the playoffs this year, but continue to build on that. Vlad, JJ, how do you answer Ramie's question? Do you think the majority of Kings fans are like, forget it, let's just go, we want to get to the postseason?
Whatever it takes.
Yes. And I think everything you said was right, Nick. And I think people would be happy with, stick at 6 and 7 for a couple of years. And if it's just like, this isn't working, then blow it up and go back to the beginning. They just want that pit stop in the playoffs for at least a little bit.
Yeah,
they want the taste.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything Chris is saying. At this point, when you haven't experienced something in so long, it's like a diet. When you go on a diet for a while, a long time, and then you get that first taste of sugar, it's like, oh my goodness, I just need a lot of that right now. And then once you kind of get the overload, you're kind of looking around like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have did that, man. Or maybe I need something different. Or maybe I need to balance this a little more. That's pretty much what the Kings are looking for. They need a lot of balance, Nick and Ramie. Balance,
that
man.
sugar fix. They want that sugar fix.
Come on now. I need that pixie stick.
Gattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports, 1140. He went pixie stick on us. Let me look at a couple of guys, Ramie, because obviously, again, tomorrow the legal tampering period officially begins, which really began probably a week or two ago. But a couple of names that I would kind of throw out there. And I know we'll talk maybe big splashes later, a couple of names that have been linked to the Kings and whether or not we think those are big splashes. But at least in the short term, aside from a big-time trade that comes down, and it might. Again, Carmichael Dave is continuing to tweet out and talk about it in the morning show. He still has sources with the Kings organization telling him they are still talking to the Hawks about John Collins. But for the time being, the next 24 hours or so, Mo Bamba was non-tendered by the Orlando Magic, which makes him an unrestricted free agent. Yes, I'd be interested in Mo Bamba. He's a 7-foot rim protector, shot 38% from three-point land. He's only 24 years old. Ramie, would you be interested in Mo Bamba?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so he's on the list. Again, remember, your wish list, let's make sure it's not delusional, people. Like, they have the mid-level. They can't go out and sign somebody for $25 million a year.
We have to be realistic
Yes,
with this?
we have to be real.
That's no fun, Nick.
So you've got $10.3 million or so to spend. So Mo Bamba is on my list. Somebody else who is on my list, Gary Harris. Again, he's also in Orlando, or was in Orlando. He had some trouble his shooting dropped big time, fell off a cliff for a couple of years. But last year, he found his stroke again in Orlando. He can defend the 1 through the 3 positions on the floor, which I think is vital. He shot more than 41% on catch and shoot threes last year. Shot better than 41% catch and shoot threes, which is just a tremendous number. And if you're playing off of Domas and Foxy, you need guys who can catch and shoot from 3. Harris did that at a ridiculous clip last season. I think he shot 45% on catch and shoot threes in December, if I remember correctly. That's insane. And he's only 27 years old. So he's just walking into his prime. Gary Harris, yes or no, Ramie?
Yeah, I'm down with Gary Harris. I like Gary Harris.
Another guy I like, Bruce Brown from the Nets. I think he could be a nice piece. Versatility. He's kind of the forward version of Gary Harris. He can defend the 3 of the 4. He can play small ball 5. He's a pretty good defender. He rebounds well. The best thing about Brown offensively to me is he cuts. And I think when you have somebody who cuts consistently, the way that Brown and Jordy Fernandez want to run this offense, and Jay Triano, they're going to ask guys to cut. And Bruce Brown will get 4 to 6 points a night just off of his cuts. And I go back to the catch and shoot. He shot almost 41% from three-point land, catch and shoot last year. He's 25 years old. That's another guy I like. And finally,
is he only 25?
He's only 25. And
feels like he's been around for a while, doesn't it?
Yeah, no doubt about it. It does. Some guys feel like they've been around forever, and they're only like 24, 25, which is scary. And then the final name on the list, Otto Porter. I like Otto Porter. He's 3/4. Again, he can defend. He was healthy last year for the Warriors. Just won a ring. He brings that veteran experience, now championship experience. He shot almost 36% on catch and shoot threes. He can shoot the basketball well. And he's a guy, Ramie, you talk about age, 29 years old. So he's still in his prime. And don't forget, he had to deal with injuries. So, he doesn't feel like he's 29. But that would be my list I start with. Mo Bamba, Gary Harris, Bruce Brown, Otto Porter Jr. If you land one of those guys with your mid-level, you should be happy as a Kings fan.
Mo Bamba and Otto Porter Jr. were also on my free agent target list for the Kings this year. at the top of my list, and not to go back and have the same conversation we had in the first hour of the show, Nick, but I had bring back Dante. I'm looking at my notes right now. Yeah, I take notes. I know it might not sound like it. I take notes. I'm prepared. And the first thing here on my list is bring back Dante. And today, if you're just tuning in and didn't hear the news, they declined the option on Dante DiVincenzo. Not ruling out that he'll be back, but it's not a good sign in terms of bringing back Dante DiVincenzo to the Kings. After that, along with Otto Porter Jr., another guy that they could maybe sign if they free up some cap space, maybe trading Barnes. I like Oladipo. And if I'm really wishing and hoping, if nothing else, just for entertainment's sake, Nick, I would love if this team today, Bobby Portis turned down his player option with the Milwaukee Bucks. Man, that guy brings his box score is not the most impressive in the world. He's a 6th or 7th guy for a really good contending championship team. But what that guy brings in grit and heart and nastiness and fight and just that arena will be rocking. Bobby Portis knows how to get a crowd going and get him behind the team. I would love if the Kings could make a run at Bobby Portis, and I could watch that guy 82 times a year again. Sacramento Kings uniform.
I love Bobby Portis, and I think he's a really good fit next to Domas too. I really do. He can stretch the floor. He can knock down the three.
Milwaukee's got the bird rights on him, so it looks like he'll probably be back. They can keep him in the fold at a relatively modest cap hit. But if he gets out into the free agent market, I think that's a guy who brings what the Kings need, some depth there in the front court, a big guy who can bang around a little bit, but who can also stretch a defense and shoot the three a little bit. Bobby Portis is exactly what this Kings team needs if he gets out there on the free agent market.
More Kings, more NBA talk coming up next.
trying to get you home after another long day and through the drive time afternoon traffic. Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140.
Time to check out Coastside Medical Clinic, dedicated to providing breakthrough remedies for men. Check them out, Coastside Medical Clinic. A couple of texts. Also want to take a phone call on the Kings, and then I want to get to some of this Kyrie business that happened over the last few days. The text line, as always, you can reach us, 916-339-1140. So the Kings were on the rise a few years ago, got playoff desperate, traded for Barnes. Text line, make the playoffs so better free agents will sign here. I mean, certainly the hope is that if you make a run, you are, quote-unquote, sexier to free agents, and they might take less money. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. We'll see if it works this year with some of the teams that made runs like the Memphis Grizzlies, like the Celtics. Will they get a little extra love from free agency or not? We'll see. Jury is still out. Text line, bleep that bleep. Championship or bust. No settling. Have some discipline and be great. I agree with that text. Again, if there's a home run move to be made, then you make it. I would not be desperate to make a move, however. You've got Fox, you've got Domas, you just drafted Keegan, and I just would not make a move that would get me some incremental movement up, right? If I feel like, all right, this is the move that'll get me in the conversation to be a top 5 or 6 seed with some room to improve, yeah, that's the kind of deal I'm looking at. If it's a deal that I think, okay, it'll get us to the 7th or 8th seed and we might be stuck there for a couple of years, I would not be, desperate to make a move like that. Let's go to Gary, who wants to talk some basketball. Hey, Gary.
Hey, Nick. Hey, I'm a longtime Kings fan ever since they came to town. I'm totally with you. I don't give a darn if they're in the 7th or 8th position. That's not what we're looking for. I'm looking for a better quality team. And the thing that I don't like about the Kings is playing people out of position. So without trading Domas and Fox, if we could pick up a center like Matumba or somebody like that, and we could play Domas at the 4 position, and we could put Barnes back in the 3 position where they were all-stars, I'd be in 7th heaven.
Thanks for the phone call. Appreciate you, Gary. Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you can there's a chance here that you can make a move that'll get you to the 7th or 8th seed this year. I mean, there is that chance. I just don't want to give up like a bunch of future assets and go crazy to bring somebody in who, will just kind of help us a little bit. And Brad Clayton jumps in on the YouTube saying, Nick doesn't understand how bad it's been for 16 years straight. Yeah, I grew up a Red Sox fan. I grew up a Celtics fan when they were really, really bad in the Patino years. I might not have a clear understanding for 16 straight years, but I've been a fan of some really, really bad teams for a long time. And people think that, if you think Boston and New England have always been successful, well, you missed the first 20 or so years of my life, which was watching a bunch of bad product. I had to go see Jerome Moiso get drafted and Eric Montross get drafted and Rick Pitino draft Chauncey Billups to trade him for 80-year-old Kenny Anderson. I've seen some of the stuff. And that Kenny Anderson trade, by the way, is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. Rick Pitino was impatient. Celtics fans were impatient. They wanted to get to the playoffs. They drafted Chauncey Billups. They traded Chauncey Billups for Kenny Anderson and Rodney Rogers. And they were a playoff, and they won some more games. But you know what got them? What it got them ultimately? Squadoosh. Nothing. You got to the playoffs and you gave up.
What was that word?
Squadoosh. You gave up a really young, talented, future Hall of Famer in Chauncey Billups because you were worried about trying to slide into the playoffs barely. That's not the focus. Again,
I feel like we struck a nerve here, Nick.
No.
You all right, buddy?
I am adamant about this. Because I understand people like the playoffs. I understand you want to get to the playoffs. You want to get the postseason.
See,
but you don't want to sell your soul and go crazy and make this ridiculous trade to be the 7th seed for the next 2 or 3 years. Like if you build this right, you can still get to that point of being a 7th seed, 6th seed. But if you have a future to build upon that, that's what you want to do. That's what the goal is.
I mean, I'm not trying to do anything crazy. All right. I'm not trying to do anything crazy, but why not make a move that's a little bit risky, even if it involves giving up some future assets? Worst comes to worst, Nick, and this thing doesn't work 2-3 years from now, De'Aaron Fox will still be a valuable piece to people out there on the trade market. You can get those future assets back. You can do what Oklahoma and San Antonio are doing right now, which is just stockpiling draft picks over a 3 or 4 year period by trading the established players that they have on their roster. Again, and I know what you said, and you could be right that Keegan Murray, that Monty McNair really believes that Keegan Murray is the better player of the two between him and Ivy. But for me, I'm going to trust what I'm hearing at least 2/3 of front offices think, and what a lot of draft experts that I was reading and watching and listening to think leading up to that pick, which is Keegan Murray is a guy who's a better fit for the Kings, and Keegan Murray is a guy who's more apt and equipped to help them win right now. But if you're talking about who has the higher ceiling, if you're looking towards the future, the consensus seemed to be Ivy for most people.
Right.
So when you made that pick, for me, what I want out of this offseason completely changed. Like I said, let's push all the chips to the middle of the table and really do everything that you can do to make this a playoff team in 2023. If we're doing it fast, let's do it fast. Let's put the foot to the gas pedal.
Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140. I don't want people to get this twisted. I'm not saying don't take risk. If there's a risk that to be taken to bring somebody in, if you can take a risk to bring in a Zach LaVine, take a risk to bring in a Bradley Beal, take a risk to bring in somebody who will, legitimately help this team get to the level. If you want to push the chips in, all I'm saying is push the chips in for the right person. Don't be desperate just because you want to scratch and claw your way into the 7th seed. Like, I'm all for risk. I wanted Jaden Ivey over Keegan Murray. I'm all for the risk. But you've got to make the risk, and you've got to take the risk for the right reasons. That's my point. And so, like, if I'm taking a risk, I want to make sure that I have a ceiling that's higher than, we might be able to be the 8th seed. Like, if I'm willing to push the chips in the middle of the table, then what I'm bringing back has to be worthwhile. It's not I'm going to sit there and trade my future for somebody who can give us a little bit better of a chance of winning, like as far as like 8th seed. So, it all depends. It's all in the details, right? I mean, if you can make a trade and bring somebody in, and we'll talk about these guys, in the 5 o'clock hour, if you can bring in John Collins or Tobias Harris and you don't have to give up a ton, then, I mean, yeah, fine. I'm just saying what you don't want to do is make this like Godfather offer to bring somebody in that's going to make you incrementally better. If you're going to make the Godfather offer and put all those chips in the middle, make sure it's worth it. That's my point.
Is there a guy out there that's worth it, though?
Unfortunately, I don't think so.
We're talking about John Collins and Tobias Harris. And for me, if those are the best guys on the trade market, within reason, go do what you got to do to make those guys Sacramento Kings. And let's see some playoffs this year. If this is the road that we're taking, if we're taking the fast road there, then let's go fast.
See, I just believe you can accomplish both. I believe that you can.
I've never believed that. I've literally never believed that.
I don't know. I believe you can accomplish both by saying, look, we don't have to burn all the buildings to the ground and burn all of our assets to bring in somebody who will, help our team incrementally.
Just some of them.
Yeah, I think you can make a deal and give up some assets, bring somebody in to improve your team. Make this team better, make this team, a shot to get to the playoffs, but you don't have to burn your future as well. Unless it's somebody like a Zach LaVine, unless it's somebody who's, 25, 26 years old, and you could sit there and say they'll be here for 8, 10 years. Like, then we're talking. Then, I mean, there are a lot of teams that catch grief for not making trades at the time. And then when you look back, you go, they made the right move, right? Sometimes the best trades are the ones that you don't make, is the old cliche. It's true. Like, if you deal for a guy and you get to the 7th seed, and then Domas is coming up, and Domas goes, okay, well, yeah, being the 7th seed was great, but I don't see us having a path to be like a actual contender, and I want to go win a title. And then you're kind of starting all over again. So I don't think you want to burn everything into the future. I think you want to, if you find the right guy, then do it by all means. throw everything onto the table that you need to throw onto the table to bring in a true difference maker. But if that guy is not available, I don't want Monty reaching for a dude who's going to, help you be in the play-in, but ultimately won't get you there, right? Like that's my point. If you're going to utilize the assets and trade and push, as you said, Ramie, all the chips in the middle, just make sure it's worth it. That's it.
I say put the best win now team out there that you can put out there. Even if you have to overpay a little bit, put the best win now team out there that you can put out there. If playoffs is the thing, and that's how we're handling this, then let's go. Let's go.
All right, we'll continue this conversation, myself and Ramie, with all of you. Don't forget, you can give us a call, 1-800-920-1140. You can text in 916-339-1140.
One guy's trying not to throw furniture.
That's a personal foul.
While the other's still trying to find some. Cattles and Ramie. Sacktown Sports 1140.
And I want to get to the people, but before I get to the people, I was thinking about how I can just summarize my thoughts easily for everybody. The easiest way to put how I feel. Ramie and I were just talking about, do you put all your chips in the middle of the table and go for this big splash? I'm fine with it. Just don't mess it up is my point. Like, I'm all for a big trade. I'm all for going for the big, huge, gigantic swing. Just don't mess it up. Make it worthwhile. Don't take a swing on somebody that gets you, don't make this big, quote unquote, big trade to limp into the playoffs. And then 2 or 3 years from now, we're talking about, okay, well, now we got to start from scratch again. Domas is a free agent and Fox is coming up in a year or two. We might as well trade him. And, Keegan Murray has been good for us, but do we want to sign him to an extension? Like going through all that stuff. I think the Kings are in a really good position right now to build this team the right way. And I just don't want them to act out of desperation and make the wrong move that will set you back inevitably years. And you'll say, well, yeah, as Jay said earlier, the whole, the quick hit of the sugar. You get into the playoffs. Yeah, we got in and you're excited. And then a year or two later, you're right back where you were before, and you kind of burned your future for that quick hit. So if you're going to make the trade, if Monty's, I am at the front of the line. If you want to make a big trade and throw those chips in the middle, cool. Just don't mess it up. Just don't do it for the right reasons. Don't act out of desperation.
Has there ever been a big splash move that wasn't risky, that there wasn't some inherent risk in it? Unless you're going and getting a Kevin Durant or a LeBron James in a trade around the free agent market. Those guys don't come around all that often, especially on the trade or free agent market. That there's inherent risk in any splashy move that they make now. 2, even if they screw it up, you just hit the reset button in a few years from now, and you just pointed out you're going to have some valuable assets in some of the younger guys, De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis and these guys who will be tradable assets in 2 years from now. And see, man, sugar is so good, Nick. Isn't sugar? Sugar is so good, man. Like, I need it in my life every day. If I took a day off from sugar and then went back to it, I think that's what Kings fans would feel like after 16 years of not making the playoffs.
All right, let's go to Brad. Brad wants to talk about the Kings, free agency, all that good stuff. What's up, Brad?
Well, first of all, LeBron and Kevin Durant are garbage now. Okay, let's get down to the point right there. Let's just say it how I have to say it. Anywho, the bottom line here is this. I've been a Kings fan my whole life, and I see right to the wheels fall off. Now, everyone's talking bad about Keegan. People don't even know about this cat. Like, everyone's on Avon Chivy's jockstrap. Like, why? Like, why? Hey, Jane Ivey is not all that, y'all. Have you seen him play? And then here we talk about, like, this really pisses me off because I've been a Kings fan my whole life, and I know what we need to be. We need a good shooting guard. Okay, what shooting guard do we have? Tell me, I'll wait. So if we could snatch Bradley Beal or a good shooting guard is what we need to shoot for. That's what we need to go after.
Right, Brad.
The bottom line is, okay, hold on, I'm not finished.
Oh, okay.
The bottom line is, we don't have the hype. We don't. And first of all, Nick, you're not from Sacramento, so you don't know nothing about what's going on around here.
Oh, all right, Brad, okay? Enough. All right, enough. No. We're not going to go there. I don't have to be from Sacramento to not understand the game of basketball and not understand where the Kings are from and what they're doing. I mean, enough is enough. You're not from Sacramento, so you don't know what the Kings are. I mean, can you stop it? I don't have to be from here to understand what's going on here. That's absurd. It's absurd and it's ignorant. I understand what's going on with Sacramento. Here's the deal. I actually, for the last 10 years of my life, worked on a show that was pretty much a national radio show, and I worked in national radio for ESPN. So when I watch the NBA, I watch all of the NBA. I have a really good handle, I would hope to believe, on this team and what the league is all about. And guess what? I do a lot of homework, and I've spent the last 6 months to 7 months, even 8 months, going back to October when I knew I was getting this job, or at least I think it was around November or so. I was watching the Kings when I was in Virginia every single night to study up on them. So don't doubt my work ethic, Brad. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as far as, they need a shooting guard. Yes, we talked about it. Dante DiVincenzo was not, offered the qualifying offer. He was not tendered. He's a free agent. We all know they need a two guard. Whether I'm from Sacramento or San Antonio, we know they need a two guard. And, Bradley Beal, look, Brad, here's the unfortunate thing, buddy. We have to deal with reality. I know you hate it, but the reality is, if you want Bradley Beal, he is now a free agent. You've got to go out there and pay him more than $40 million a year, which you don't have. You don't have that. Secondly, if you want to trade for Bradley Beal, now you have to wait for him to sign a new contract with the Wizards, wait at least, I think it is 6 months, and then you can make the trade, and you would have to hope that Bradley Beal actually wants to be here in Sacramento. We could throw all of these things up against the wall. Again, my point is, I'm all for splashy as long as you don't mess it up, as long as you don't make a bad trade. Don't make a bad trade just to be splashy. That's the point. A lot of teams make these splashy trades. How long have the Knicks tried to bring in these stars, right? How long have these teams tried so hard to bring these people in, and they end up giving up future assets and all this and that, and it gets them nowhere. Gets them nowhere in the end. I'm telling you.
But that's the risk, Nick, in doing what we're talking about here. And I'm not here to come down on Keegan Murray or to say he won't be a good NBA player, and he might be the better player between him and Jaden Ivey. We don't know. I trust and believe people who know much more than I do. You know what? Sometimes you just have to defer to people who know more than I do. And when leading up to the draft, what we heard, Murray better fit positionally for the Kings and what they need, and more ready to help them right now. Ivy was the guy they were saying has the more star potential, higher ceiling, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, and I could be wrong, maybe Monty McNair is telling the truth when he says he thinks they got the better player, but that's what a GM is going to say. What else would he say? Why would he say anything different? You think he's going to come out and say, we got the better player now, but probably not 3-4 years from now? That'd be the dumbest thing a GM could step to a microphone and say.
All I'm saying is this. Teams that act out of desperation, 9 times out of 10 make terrible moves. When bad organizations or organizations that act out of desperation, not a clear thought process, not the right approach, they go for the quick fix, and 9 times out of 10, the quick fix doesn't work. And all I'm saying is, if you're going to give up assets and you're going to give up whatever you're going to give up, make the splashy move. But you've got to make the move that makes sense. And yes, there's always risk. There's risk in everything you do in sports, and I'm not saying don't take the risk. I'm saying take the worthy risk, the calculated risk. There's a difference between a risk that is calculated and a risk that is just willy-nilly throw it up against a wall. And what I'm saying is you don't want to do the willy-nilly throw it up against a wall risk, because the vast majority of those blow up in your face.
I don't want to make that deal knowingly, the willy-nilly throw it against a wall. But if you make a move and it has the potential to be that, I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? If that risk is there inherently in the trade that you make, I'm gonna run that risk. I think we're already down this road, Nick.
Anywho,
I don't think we're already down the road. I'll continue the conversation with Ramie. We'll continue it with you. Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140. Anywho.
It's the new spot for local sports talk in the afternoon. Cattles and Ramie. Sacktown Sports 1140.
Chad Smith, underrated drummer. Red Hot Chili Peppers. Very good at what he does.
Do you have any musical talent, Nick? You a musician at all?
Play the drums. Play the drums growing up.
Really?
Yes.
I tried playing the drums, but they wanted me to learn the drums, and I was like, dude, just teach me the Led Zeppelin solo. Just show me which drums to hit. Let's go.
I just want to be John Bonham, man. What are you talking about?
What do I have to practice?
Supposed to learn this stuff. So Ramie and I last hour spent a lot of time talking about whether or not the Kings should try to make a splashy move. And I actually think we agree more than it sounds. But we'll get to that in a minute. I also want to get to some of your thoughts. We do want to update everybody just joining us. Big news in the NBA, number one. DeJounte Murray gets traded from the Spurs to the Hawks. The Hawks send back 3 first-round picks and Danilo Gallinari.
This is big.
It is big. And so now we've got DeJounte Murray and Trae Young as a new backcourt in Atlanta. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. The Spurs look like they're totally resetting their program with Greg Popovich, which is kind of interesting because Pop is in his 70s now. So we'll see how that works out. Of course, that also means in Atlanta, probably more pieces on the move. I would expect John Collins to be on the move. Kevin Huerter is another guy. I would not be surprised if he gets dealt as well out of Atlanta. So that was the big NBA news so far today. You also have James Harden, who has opted out. Reportedly, he wants to actually sign for a little less money so the 76ers can use the full mid-level exception. The thought is maybe for PJ Tucker there. And for the Kings, we've got a bunch of tidbits, and then we've got a bigger news item. So the bigger news item is Donte DiVincenzo was not extended a qualifying offer today, which means Donte is now an unrestricted free agent. And Ramie and I talked about that a little bit earlier.
That didn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make sense unless there's something else coming down the road here. And even if something else is coming down the road, maybe you could argue you want to keep Donte as a depth piece, but I don't know if Donte DiVincenzo, remember late last year, he was arguing about the rotations and, not starting. So I don't know if this is a Donte problem.
To get nothing for him, Nick, when you could have gotten something for him?
Maybe you could have got something for him because now you got to play the game because teams might sit there and say, well, I mean, you've got to have there's a bunch of CBA minutia here. You would have to extend him the qualifying offer, which means now that qualifying offer, that money is on your books, which means if Monty wants to try to take a bigger swing, like Ramie and I were talking about last hour, he might need that cap space that Dante's deal was taking up. And and so if you deal Donte, now you have to bring back, salary, which gets in your way again. So I think we've got to see, what happens here over the next couple of weeks. And maybe once all is said and done, we look back and we say, that's why they needed that money that they would have had to give to Donte or bring back in a Donte DiVincenzo trade to bring in that guy or this guy. So
it's the first shoe to drop.
Right.
And
then if nothing happens, Monty should get criticized. If we're talking 2 weeks from now, they don't make a move and we just go, wait a minute, they lost Donte DiVincenzo for nothing and they didn't go out and get somebody to replace him. What was that all about? Then yes, he deserves the criticism. But, timing is everything, and he's got to try to figure out who might be available, and he might feel keeping Donte, even with that qualifying offer, could get in the way of him acquiring somebody better. So we'll see if that comes together. Some other quick notes for your Kings. Anywho, we've got Trey Lyles, who is coming back. His option has been picked up, $2.6 million. Chimezie Metu is coming back. His option's been picked up for $1.9 million. Neemias Queta has been offered the two-way. Looks like he's going to come back. And the California Classic roster has been released. The big names, the fun names, obviously Keegan. Keegan will be playing this weekend at Chase Center. You also have Jai Smith from Overtime Elite G League. They brought him in for a look. Jared Roden from Seton Hall. He comes in for a look. We spoke about Jariah Horn last week from Tulsa. He's going to play. And the guy that I'm really excited to watch is Keon Ellis. And we talked about him last Friday. He's the young man from Alabama that they brought in. he's going to be a part of this as well. So those are the names you want to watch: Keegan, Smith, Roden, Ellis, and Horn. And, of course, Keita will also be playing in the California Classic. So I know Keita has a lot of fans out there. The young Portuguese man with the potential. Portuguese potential, that's what we'll call him. The Portuguese potential in the center, in the center position there in the middle at 7 feet tall. Speaking of splashes, Ramie, before we get to, you like that one, huh? Speaking of splashes, before we get to the phone calls and continue the thoughts of people out there, a couple of names. I just want to throw them out there to you. Tobias Harris was linked to the Kings today. Matt Moore of the Action Network wrote that if Tobias Harris is put on the block by the 76ers, the Kings would be interested. Does Tobias Harris interest you, Ramie?
Yeah, sure. That's the type of guy I was talking about before, of making some kind of splash move to make you, or at least move you closer to being a playoff team.
Verlad, do you like Tobias Harris?
I do, but what concerns me is Ramie's higher pitch. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, of course I do.
I don't know if you quite believe that, Ramie.
Absolutely. I love him.
I mean, I believe he's a solid player. Do I go crazy for Tobias Harris? Do I think that puts him all the way over the top? No, that's what that means. Like, yeah, sure. Why not?
My concern is the money. You know, I mean, the next 2 years, he's going to make 37 and 39 million. But if you believe that he hasn't been used the right way, Ramie brought that up, I think, before the show. You know, in Philly, has he been utilized the right way? I would probably pass on Harris. The other guy is a guy we've been talking about for a while. Although I will say one more thing about Harris. He does fit the Domas timeline. So his contract would be coming up when Domas's contract comes up, which kind of goes into Ramie's point last hour. Like, hey, if you go for the swing and it works out, you make the playoffs. If you feel like you can build off of that, then great. If not, then you can kind of go out there in the market and try to
blow it up real good.
Yeah, trade Ramie, trade Tobias Harris. I don't want to trade Ramie. Just brought him in.
I just got here.
I just signed him. Just signed him to his deal. But then you can kind of pivot and maybe get rid of Harris or Domas or whatever you want to do there. The other guy we're talking about, Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140, is John Collins. So what's the latest on John Collins? Kings fans, I know all of you want to know. More rumors about Collins have come out. And, you know, there's this kind of back and forth of what is he really worth, what's being asked. Jake Fisher said that outside of the Spurs, there doesn't appear to be any serious active conversation surrounding Collins. Now, that's interesting because, yes, there was apparently a deal that could have been put together that would have sent both Gallinari and Collins, or just Collins, to San Antonio with all of those picks. Apparently, the Spurs wanted the blow it up version of the trade, which was bring in Gallinari, his expiring, probably buy him out, and just take the picks. So they were talking to the Spurs about Collins. Also from Fisher, Sacramento, Portland, Boston, and Brooklyn all registered some level of interest in Collins around the draft, but none of these teams appear far along with Atlanta. So Sacramento has talked to Atlanta, but according to Jake Fisher, they don't seem far along on a deal, which means, you know, there hasn't been really deep negotiations.
I'm getting the sense to this point, sorry to cut you off there, Nick, that they're asking too much, because he's a good player. He's a solid player that a lot of teams would have interest in. There is the doubts, the questions, the concerns about his availability. I think you pointed out the other day, he's had under 60 games for, I think, 3 years running now, is what you said the other day on the show. So I think that teams see the talent, they see how he could help their basketball team, but the availability, I think, raises some red flags for a lot of basketball teams. And maybe the Hawks aren't willing to accept that reality, that teams aren't as high on him as they maybe are with their asking price.
Yeah, 55 games a year over the last 4 years. And to mention what Ramie just brought up, the Hawks and what they're hoping for, let's hear from Zach Lowe. Zach Lowe on his podcast yesterday with Bobby Marks talked about the Hawks, and he talked about John Collins' trade value. Here's what Lowe had to say.
For the Hawks, again, depending on the Collins, if and when return, I think John Collins' trade value, from what I've heard, is I think a little lower than what Hawks fans are going to want to hear. I just don't know where that leaves me.
So the trade market's not great for Collins. And it sounds like, the Hawks, I don't know if the Hawks are surprised by that, but it doesn't sound like there's a lot out there for Collins, and that does make me interested in Collins. If it was Collins or Tobias Harris, I would take Collins. I know you're on the hook longer term with the money, but it's less money per year. This dude was 21-10 per game at 22 years old in the NBA. 21-10. Now, he only played half the season that year, which is the problem.
Right.
He played 41 games, but when he plays, I mean, he's 24 years old. The cost being so low, I think it's worth it. Like, if you could trade Harrison Barnes and a protected first-round pick or something like that for Collins, I'd be in on that trade. I mean, I think this guy, can give you easily 18-8. And you just hope he stays healthy. Let's continue with the phone calls. Let's go to Eric. Eric's up next, wants to talk Kings.
Hey, Nick, you got me?
Got you, Eric. What's up, bud?
Well, I am going to the Summer League game on this Saturday.
Nice.
I'll be down there with the crew. And, I booked my hotel. I'll be at the second weekend of the Summer League in Las Vegas.
Love it. By the way, I will say this. Let me get the cheap plug in here, Eric. Sacktown Sports 1140 will be covering the Summer League from pillar to post. We'll be down there as well. So, look for them.
J-Ross down there again.
Wait, you said we're going, Nick? Afternoon shows?
No, the station is going. We're not going.
Jason Ross.
Don't get my hopes up like that.
So I am a Vegas, I won't say regular. I'm a Vegas guy. I play poker, and I would ask that you please kind of let's slow our roll on the poker terms here, because there's a big difference between calling a big bet in poker versus going all in. I think you seem to be, I'm not confusing them, but the all in is, I would say, like what the Lakers have done the last few years, even when they won the championship with the aging LeBron, who I know he's good, but extremely old LeBron, extremely old roster. What they just did with Westbrook, as much as that's an all in. I mean, their future is ruined. They have no first round picks for like the rest of my lifetime, basically. That is an all in. You make it sound like the Kings trading for Collins. I know you're going to argue with me, but you're implying that trading for Collins means that you can only get to the 7th seed, and that's as far as you can go. I know you're going to say it's not what you're saying, but it is what you're saying.
No, that's almost what I'm saying. That's almost what I'm saying. I'm not even hiding from that. When I say all in, I'm just saying what assets you have, you're pushing to the middle of the table to make this thing happen right now. The Lakers and the Kings
Keegan Murray, Dagon Mitchell, guys like that. And I think it's important to realize that the caller Brad maybe was a little brash about it, but he is correct. You are not from here. I'm not saying you can't talk sports, but 16 years of doomsday.
Yeah, we don't know the feeling.
Didn't see the Warriors. That's a big deal. I want baby steps. I want to make the playoffs. I don't care if it's the 7th seed and we lose the first round. I haven't seen it since World War II almost, a playoff series, it feels like. So I think baby steps is the way to go. And that shows the fan base that Monty McNair is doing his job. So let's get that 7th seed, guys.
All right, Eric, thanks. I appreciate the phone call. Again, I don't know if it's me not explaining myself well enough. Like, I have no problem taking a swing. I have no problem trying to get to the playoffs. I don't think you need to make this big old drastic, crazy move to be in the playoff conversation. All I'm saying is I don't want to, as you mentioned, Brad, like I don't want this team to give up just a ton of really good assets to make a deal that's going to get them incrementally better like that. And by the way, I didn't even mention John Collins. I think this team could be better than the 7th seed with John Collins. I think, that all depends on internal development. What do you get from Fox? What do you get from Domas once he gets comfortable here? How good is Keegan Murray, and how quickly can he make an impact? And what I was saying was, as far as, not being here from Sacramento, again, I grew up in New England, and I know a lot of people just see New England as like, this monster because they've won so much since 2000. And that is true. But I'm not 18 years old. Like, I'm not one of those kids that were like at 11 parades for like, in over their first 5 years of life. I've watched strings of bad teams and bad sports and losing seasons over and over and over again. I can look back. I don't know. I don't think it was 16 straight years, but a lot of years of badness.
I grew up a Cubs fan, and I'm a lifelong Bears fan. So I do know suffering as a fan, but I don't think any team that I grew up rooting for went through 16 years of not even seeing the postseason. You know what I mean? Most fan bases at least get that little taste or that little tease of postseason appearances and maybe the potential or the possibility for bigger things than that down the road. I mean, that's enough to keep you going. You know what I mean? To go back to
all right,
JJ's,
let me stop you. I got to jump in. Verlad's telling me let's take a break here for about 60 seconds. We'll come right back. We'll continue the conversation between the two of us and the listeners. Cattles, Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140.
Sacramento has a new tag team in the afternoons.
You're talking to the original tag team of ugly pukes here.
It's Cattles. It's Ramie. Sacktown Sports 1140.
All right, Ramie.
Yes, sir.
You want to continue your point as you were at a stop you mid-sentence, or Chris was going to run into the studio and drop kick me?
Anywho,
just saying that 16 years of not even a taste of the playoffs is that's a level of suffering that I don't know that we can necessarily understand. I think you have to experience that to really understand that and understand the thirst or the hunger of Kings fans right now, and just wanting a little, going back to JJ's sugar analogy, just a little taste of sugar, just to hit off that pixie stick. You know what I mean?
I don't listen. I don't disagree with that. That I have not witnessed a team that has not made the playoffs in 16 straight. I understand all that. My point is, just because I haven't experienced that doesn't mean that I don't know what I'm talking about. And I think people are saying,
no.
Hold on. So I think when people say, like, for example, Brad in the YouTube chat saying, I'm not the caller, Brad, but I agree. And then earlier he says, Nick doesn't know what a big swing is, though. That's the problem. Like, just because I haven't lived through 16 straight years without the playoffs doesn't mean that, like, I don't understand what a good trade is and a good trade isn't. And as a matter of fact, I would argue, because of my experience, because I have witnessed what it takes to win championships, you might want to give my opinion a little bit of credence here, because I've seen teams not go for the, quick fix. I was doing radio in Boston in 2017 and 2018. You want to know how many people would call into those shows and say, trade Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, trade Jason Tatum for, somebody else. You know how many people wanted to trade both of those guys for, like, Paul George back in the day? And while it would have been a trade that brought Paul George to the Celtics and would have ended up leading to the Celtics being in the playoffs and probably, being a little bit more, successful quicker than they were, ultimately, what was the right move? They just made it to Game 6 of the finals because they decided that they did not want to make a move out of desperation. They wanted to hold on to Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum and develop those guys. So what I'm saying is, sometimes, people want the quick hit, the quick sugar fix, as JJ said earlier in the show. And all I'm saying is, I understand that. I understand wanting the quick fix, not 16 years of thirst, but I understand this idea of, man, we can get to the playoffs right now. And what I'm saying is, When you make a move out of desperation, the majority of the time you mess up. When you feel like you have to make a move, this team is not in a position right now they're not one move away from being a championship team. If you were one move away from being a championship team, then I'd say, oh yeah, at all costs, throw it, as Brad said with his poker analogies, go all in on it. Again, people I think are misconstruing what I'm saying. Take the risk. Just make sure you don't screw things up is my point. Like there are calculated risks. There are big swings. And my take is I would take a swing at John Collins. I think that makes you better. I don't think you have to burn your future. You bring a guy in who can give you 20 and 10 on any given night. He makes you a playoff team, I believe. That's the kind of move I'm doing. Now, as far as a big swing, if you could get me Bradley Beal or Zach LaVine or one of those, or even Jalen Brown, if you could get me one of those guys, sure. Give everything you've got to give up to bring one of those guys back.
Nice.
But what I'm
getting one of those.
What I'm saying is, I don't think those guys are necessarily available. So what I don't want Monty to do is continue to add assets and throw them into a trade to bring back somebody that is not going to make you ultimately better for the next 4 or 5 years. Because I think you're on the track to get there anyway. And I know it's tough for Kings fans to believe. And again, I've been here for 7 months. But I think this team is building the right way. And I think you've got young talent. I think you've got some all-star caliber talent on this basketball team. And I think you've just got to make sure that when you make that big-time move, it's the right move at the right time. Because if you miscalculate that, it's all going to blow up in your face.
Let me use a different analogy. Let's go away from JJ's sugar analogy. Good analogy, but let me use a different analogy.
I like that.
It's closing time, right? You're out. It's the weekend. It's closing time. And you've not only gone home this whole weekend alone, you've been going home alone for 16 years, Nick. For 16 years. You keep saying making decisions out of desperation usually doesn't end up well. And long term, whatever decision you might make there at closing time, in the long run, you might regret that decision. But that moment of not being alone, you probably enjoyed it enough that it was all worth it, right?
But we're acting like this team doesn't have a chance to get into the playoffs without a big swing, and I disagree with that. That's the premise. The
play in or play off.
Your premise, and other people's premise is you got to make that. It's either take the big swing and get into the playoffs, or don't take the big swing and miss the playoffs. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you like bringing in somebody like John Collins again. I don't think you have to give up a ton to bring Collins in. And I think Collins makes you a playoff team. If look, a lot of this will rely on De'Aaron Fox, frankly. If De'Aaron Fox plays like a number one, or he plays like he played in the post-Halley trade, and you've got Foxy playing like post-Halley, and you've got Domas, and you've got John Collins, I think that gives you a legitimate chance to be in the mix. I think you're at the table. And look, play-in is anywhere from the 7 to the 10 seed. So with that basketball team, I think you could be a 7 seed if you play up to your ceiling with Keegan Murray, added. That's my beef. Like, I think people are looking at this team saying like, oh, you have to take the big swing to be the 7 seed. I don't agree with that. I think you can take a swing, be the 7 seed, and then build off of that. And when it's time to strike for that big deal that can make you a legitimate contender, you'll be in the spot to do that. JJ, I know you want to say something.
No, I was just going to say, I think you kind of cleared it up for me. I think I was going to agree with you, and I know I was going to agree with you, Nick, in the fact of there is a caliber of player that the Kings can trade for that will push them further up the playoff ranking compared to if you were just trying to go all out and throw everything at the wall to grab, my boy Dame or something like that. And you're going to give up so many assets that it's probably going to set you back. And I think that's part of it. There is a balance to something, but I do understand what Ramie and a lot of the other, callers and listeners are saying. I get the fact that you want to, as Ramie said, you want to go home with something compared to not go home at all with anything compared. But I think there is a point to where there's a level of a player that you can get that's attainable. It's reachable. It's attainable. You don't have to give up everything to go get a John Collins, to go get a Zach LaVine, a Jeremy Grant, which we've seen, a Cam Reddish, something or someone that you think is going to make a difference for you as a team. There's a balance.
There's a balance. And so, my guy, Brad, who's been, I would say very passionate in the YouTube page, saying, Nick wants to take a swing, but wants to take a risk, but not take the risk. Again, just as JJ said, there's as Conor McGregor once said, there are levels to this. There are levels of risk. And what I'm saying is, don't make this trade that could cripple you 4 or 5 years down the road to bring somebody in who is going to make you a little bit better. That's not worth it. To me, it's not at all costs. We're trading future assets and all that just to bring in somebody who will make us a little bit better. No. If I'm trading future pick, like multiple picks, and I'm trading Davion or some of my young pieces, if I'm making that kind of trade, then I have to bring somebody back that's not going to make me a little bit better. That's the point. And I'm actually very surprised that people do not agree with, I don't have more people agreeing with me on this. The whole idea is you don't want to burn the next 5 or 6 years for somebody who's going to make you a little bit better. You want to make that trade for somebody who's going to make you a lot better. That's
I'm
my
not
point.
I'm not giving up the whole organization for John Collins. That's not what I'm saying. But if it looks on the surface like you overpaid a little bit, I'm okay with that.
He's Ramie. I'm Cattles. Cattles and Ramie on a Wednesday. Sacktown Sports 1140.
Just two guys rubbing elbows, talking sports, and lots of other stuff.
They always keep you on edge.
That's really crazy interesting. It's Cattles and Ramie. Sacktown Sports 1140.
All right, I've said enough on this. Ramie, I think you've said enough on this. I think our points have been out there. I'm done talking about risks and what's not worth taking and what I'm done.
Anywho.
Yeah, hopefully people pick up what I'm putting down. If not, then I don't know. But I'm moving on with my life. I will take two calls though, because we've had people waiting patiently. So I do want to eventually get to the Kyrie Irving drama because both Ramie and I love talking about that mess. Before I get to the calls, though, I want to remind you, got to take care of some business or JJ will be upset at me. It's time to get a new mattress. You want to shop local at Sleep First. So remember our friends at Sleep First. Let's go to Rob. Rob's up next. Hey, Rob.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good.
So I actually have been kind of on both of your sides with the idea of getting rid of a guy. I just think unless we can get a solid player back for Harrison Barnes, it might be worth seeing if he wants to stick around just based on the fact that he's been so loyal. I know after this year, his contract's up, so that is like a 50-50 double-edged sword. You know, if you don't get rid of him now and we lose him next year, we lose him for nothing. And he's been great for us. So you can't let that happen. But, I mean, I don't know. I like John Collins a lot. But, I mean, I've kind of been thinking as his name's come up lately, what do you guys think of Miles Bridges? And, I mean, I like John Collins, I think, more than Bridges. But we might be able to get him for less, maybe save Rashawn Holmes, who I don't know if he's going to work out well with us. I like the idea of running two bigs together if they can work it out together.
Yeah.
But that's not been we have not been good at that, you know, from a historical standpoint since Weber and Vlade, which is 16 years, as we've been saying, a long time. But I mean, I've been a season ticket holder with my family for 30 years. So, I mean, I remember before we were good, a long, long period of time when we were not good. I mean, Mitch Richmond, great player, but we sucked. But I mean, that's kind of my thought. Would you guys think it's worth taking a shot on Bridges? Do you think he's asking too much money? Do you think we could get him for a guy like Rashawn Holmes and some cash considerations, or some pieces that aren't going to be crucial for our development down the line? And if not, then do you think it's crucial or important to start really shopping Barnes right away before we lose out on him entirely?
Gotcha, Rob. Thank you. I appreciate the phone call, bud, and thanks for listening. Ramie, how do you feel about Miles Bridges?
I like him. I don't think he's not a franchise changing player, but that's another one of those types of guys along the lines of a John Collins that I think you can make a trade for that. You have the assets, you have the resources that it would take to get a guy like that, and he pushes you more solidly into the playoff picture. It doesn't put you over the top, doesn't make you, a 4 seed or a 5 seed or anything like that. But those are the types of moves that we're talking about right now with this Kings team. And that's another one of those guys where if it looks on paper, knee-jerk reaction, oh, they overpaid. I'm okay at this point with overpaying a little bit for a Miles Bridges type.
I love Miles Bridges. I loved him in college. I was pumping his tires before that draft. I love his game, and I think he has finally figured it out at the NBA level. He is now creating his own shot. He's playmaking. He's, he has shown the ability to shoot. He's obviously a strong finisher around the basket. I really like Bridges. I mean, to me, John Collins versus Bridges, I am going Bridges every single time over Collins. I think Bridges is a better player than Collins. I think Bridges is healthier than Collins. So I would go Bridges if I had that choice out of those two guys. I would pick Miles Bridges over John Collins. I do think Charlotte wants to hold on to him, though. We'll see what happens. They're kind of, they're a weird team. I mean, MJ's always changes my. I don't know what he wants. Honestly, I really don't. He's on the balance. He's been pretty bad. They want to get rid
I don't
of.
know if he knows what he wants.
Yeah, they want to get rid of Gordon Hayward. That's a terrible contract. I read that they want to try to get rid of Terry Rozier. They just gave him that contract last year. Sounds like they want to keep Bridges, but it's messy. It's absolutely messy in Carolina. All right, quickly, I want to get to Kyrie Irving. So we all know, I think, what happened over the last few days with Kyrie and going back to last week, this back and forth. And, he was looking for trades and people thought that he might be able to find a trade partner and blah, blah. He opted in. And what happened here, Ramie, was Brooklyn called his bluff. They called his bluff. They said, okay, Kyrie, if you think you can go out there and find a team that's willing to pay you close to a max deal and give up assets, good luck. Go out and try to find that team. And I think what happened was Kyrie Irving had a very rude awakening over the last week or so and realized that he might not be as valuable as he thought he was before this whole thing began. And I like how, Verlad, if we can get Sean Marks at that press conference, this really began right once the season ended. Like, as soon as the Nets were swept by the Celtics, Sean Marks went out there and publicly laid down the law with Kyrie. Here he was in that post-season press conference.
Is the organization committed to Kyrie long term?
Yeah, look, I think that's something we've been discussing and we will continue to debrief on and discuss throughout this off season. And it's honestly not just Kyrie. I mean, you bring Kyrie up, but we have decisions to make on a variety of different free agents throughout our roster. We haven't had any of those discussions yet, so it'd be unfair for me to comment on how it looks with us and Kyrie, because to be quite frank, he has some decisions to make on his own, what he's going to do with his player option and so forth like that. But I think we know what we're looking for. We're looking for guys that want to come in here, be part of something bigger than themselves, play selfless, play team basketball, and be available. And that goes not only for Kyrie, but for everybody here.
Right there, Ramie. I mean, he came out and said, look, unless this guy is completely committed to us, we're not going to be, feeling too great about him pretty much.
That was subtweeting in press conference form. That's talking about Kyrie without saying Kyrie's name. But I don't know if they called Kyrie's bluff necessarily, Nick. I do agree with you that the market probably wasn't for Kyrie what Kyrie had thought that it was, because teams around the NBA have the same concern that the Brooklyn Nets do, which is how available is this guy going to be to us? And it would be one thing if it was injuries, but it's, and look, man, your body, you do with what you want with your body. He chose not to take the vaccine, knowing what that meant as far as his availability to the team. He took the day off because of what happened at the Capitol on January 6th. He decided to go off and attend his sister's birthday party while the entire league was under quarantine rules and very restricted in terms of what you could go and not go do. He did these things and made the choice to not be available to his basketball team. And so I think the Nets and everything that I've seen, Nick, all they want is some assurances that he'll be available and to incentivize his contract to make him available, or at least get their money's worth for how available he may be. And the only reason I think that they're even willing to go that far and to do those things to make it work with Kyrie is because of Kevin Durant, because they're terrified that if they lose Kyrie, then the next chip to fall will be Kevin Durant asking to get his way out of Brooklyn also. I think that's sort of the trump card that Kyrie Irving has in his back pocket right now in these talks with the Brooklyn Nets is, hey man, if I go, KD goes. So we better work something out here. Look, I love it. I love the chaos.
There's no doubt that there's no doubt that he has, KD to try to help him and push him. But the fact that he's stuck opting in tells me that the Nets didn't give in what he wanted. What he wanted was a long-term extension. He wanted a commitment from the team. He wanted a max deal, and he didn't get it. So they said, look, you got to prove it. And I get a kick out of him saying, I'm going to fulfill my commitment of the 4 years to the Nets. As you mentioned, Ramie, just a second ago, he really hasn't fulfilled that commitment. He's been out of the lineup an awful lot on his own accord due to his own decision-making. And then he also said, which this is something else, normal people keep the world going, but those who dare to be different lead us into tomorrow. I've made my decision to opt in. See, normal people. Yeah. I think accepting 37 million instead of 6 million. I think that's what most normal people would have done, Kyrie.
People would do. That sounds like a line Matt Damon would say in a crypto commercial. Can you say that? Can you read that again?
It's just so ridiculous. Yeah. Quote, normal people keep the world going, but those who dare to be different lead us into tomorrow. I'm opting
shut
in.
up. Shut up, dude. Seriously.
That's like
God, he's annoying sometimes.
It is, though, sometimes. It is the
Jeez.
most, it is
Shut up.
That's the most Kyrie comment of all Kyrie comments. I mean, again, I think he's a good dude. He does a lot of good things for people. But man, he always has to try to come across as the deepest thinker in the room. And it's just like, it's really not that. You opted into a $37 million deal, man. Like
Right.
you didn't just change the world.
So smart.
He like
God.
always wants to come across as the martyr.
I wish I could be as smart as Kyrie and know that 37 is more than 6.
Oh, if we could only be that deep of a thinker. Some of the big NBA news that we haven't hit yet, and more coming up next.
trying to get you home after another long day and through the drive time afternoon traffic. Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports 1140.
Time to check out Coastside Medical Clinic, dedicated to providing breakthrough remedies for men. Also want to remind you that the 2022 NBA Summer League coverage we have for you here at Sacktown Sports 1140 is brought to you by Power Business Technology. You can find them online at powercopiers.com. Dave and Jason from the mornings will be down there hanging out in Vegas. It's going to be fun. They'll be down there on that Monday through Wednesday. I think it's the 11th through the 13th. We are not going down there in the afternoons because we have a bunch of 1-hour shows that week because of A's baseball. So the morning guys will have you. Frankie Cardicelli from SacktownSports.com will be covering the Summer League. Our friend Chris Watkins from SacktownSports.com will also be covering the Summer League. So we'll have all of your coverage, as much content as humanly possible for all of you, online, digital, on the radio, et cetera, et cetera. Just a couple of things before we move on. So I was just talking to Chris Watkins in the office. And it's kind of funny, like, people are telling me, like, Nick, you're from Sacramento. You're not from Sacramento, so you don't get it. And so I said to Chris, I said, wouldn't it make sense then that people might actually want to give my opinion credence? Because I don't think I've seen actually championship teams built. Well, wouldn't you like, I've seen how, and when I did national radio, I've been following NBA teams that have built from scratch and how they do it. I actually think that makes me a pretty good voice. That,
yeah, I don't think
this could be something.
I don't think people are questioning your sports opinions and sports takes.
Well, I think one guy did. I think two guys did.
Yeah, one guy did. We should have hung up on him way sooner than we did.
I know. I was nice. I gave him some time.
Every time a caller says I'm not done yet, my response is yes, you are.
Anywho,
that's that. But I think people are more questioning the feeling that they're feeling, Nick, and whether or not you can relate to that, to where you just want you're walking through the desert and you just want a drop of water. Or in this case, the playoffs. You just that drop, just that little something to wet the whistle. You know what I mean? I don't know. I always say, like, we can talk, we can give all the sports takes we want and who's right and who's wrong. I can't tell somebody how to feel, man. I can't tell somebody how to fan, and I can't necessarily know how they feel as a fan.
Fact.
To have gone through 16 years of not even going to the playoffs. That's more a human thing than a sports talk thing. You know what I mean? You don't know how somebody feels until you've actually walked in their shoes.
Fact. And I think the second caller, who I think was Brad, did a better job of expressing that. And yeah, obviously, I've not been a fan of a team that's missed 16 straight seasons for playoffs. And I've got as high as, I think I was looking this up, 7 or 8 straight years. So I haven't been there at, 16 straight years. And I would agree with that. My point is, like, putting feelings aside, the whole take of what is a good calculated risk and an absurd risk to take, that's just all about philosophy. That has nothing to do about where you're from and what you've gone through. It's my philosophy, whether I grew up in Sacramento or San Francisco or wherever. Like, I just believe that, you don't take that huge swing unless you're in a spot to do it. I'm cool. And again, I've heard, risk versus risk. What's the difference? I say calculated risk versus kind of just, we're just gonna wing it here. We're gonna
throw this at the wall.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that. I wouldn't be that. So anyway, so that's that. Let's take a look at some of the bigger news, Ramie, that's come out here in the NBA. We start with Bradley Beal, because that's a guy that we've talked about. We've talked about Bradley Beal, the idea of possibly trying to make a deal for him if you're the Kings. I don't know. I doubt Beal would want to come here. I think he's more focused on, Portland or, some of these other teams, Dallas, some of these other teams, Miami. But Beal opted out of his contract today. And a lot of people, I think, looked at that and they were wondering, does this mean that he's going to sign somewhere else? It actually, Ramie, it makes it more likely he returns to Washington, at least for the next 6 months because he could sign for more money with Washington than he could sign anywhere else. So the idea is that Beal will get out of this, opt out. He'll end up re-signing with Washington for the max deal at 5 years for like $240 million.
I gotta believe, a lot of guys, it's just lip service, but I gotta believe with Bradley Beal that he really feels loyalty and ties and love for that Washington organization or the community. Because Nick, why would you want to be a part of that Wizards organization when you could get out? And I know like you said, the money is there. Man, Bradley Beal he's been in this league for a minute. He's made his money, and somebody else will pay him a boatload if he would go somewhere else and play. He seems really set on staying there in Washington and making that thing work. And God bless him, man, because I can't wrap my head around why. That's an organization that's just going nowhere fast, just spinning their wheels for as long as I can remember.
Loyal guy, certainly. Here was Adrian Wojnarowski earlier today talking about Bradley Beal.
Bradley Beal, if he opts out of that deal, signs a new 5-year deal with Washington, that would be worth over $250 million, $251 million. Listen, I think Bradley Beal has indicated all along that, his loyalties and wanting to see it through in Washington. And, he has the opportunity, if he opts out today, to come back here in free agency and sign a massive deal. And both of those additions in the Washington backcourt, those are veterans who are going to help that team.
Now, of course, Woj is talking about Monty Morris, who was brought in, and Will Barton from Denver in a trade today. So that's the Bradley Beal thing. Look, he loses nothing by opting out and then signing more money. If the team
seems like a cash grab.
It is. And to echo what Ramie was saying, I mean, he could always ask out at the trading deadline if it's awful or next offseason, which I wouldn't be surprised by.
Yep.
The other one was John Wall goes to the Clippers. Your thoughts on that, Ramie?
Is John Wall still John Wall? Because I haven't seen John Wall be John Wall in a long time.
I haven't seen John Wall at all.
If it was that guy from 3, 4, 5 years, that John Wall going to that Clippers team, that's a big move. Like they've got their big three. You know what I mean? Added to Kawhi and Paul George. Now I don't even know what John Wall is or what he brings. Like you said, we haven't seen him play basketball in so long. I don't even know what that guy brings to the table for that basketball team. If he's got a little bit of that left in him, I think people forget how good John Wall was for a brief moment in time there.
You go back to like 2017 or so, he was on the cusp of being like one of the top 5 to 10 players in the league for around that time.
For sure. So, I mean, and he's not old. I don't have his age in front of me, but I don't think he's old by NBA standards. So maybe there's a resurgence there. He's obviously surrounded by a lot of talent and an organization that's dead set on winning. So maybe he can revive it there, but I just don't know what or who John Wall is at this point in his career.
Yeah, if he can give him, if he can give him 80% of what he once was, I think it's a great move. He plays downhill, which I think the Clippers need more of. He doesn't have to worry about shooting a ton. He can set up the other guys. If Kawhi and Paul George are healthy, he doesn't really have any pressure on him because, this team is going to be deep and talented. The other move is PJ Tucker to Philadelphia. It looks like he is likely to sign there. I like the idea of Tucker going to Philly because I think the 76ers need that kind of like dog mentality, so to speak, a guy who's going to fight and get in people's faces. They don't have enough of that. So I like the Tucker fit in Philly.
I like it too. And I had said this earlier, wherever I almost said TJ Tucker, wherever PJ Tucker goes, man, he just has instant positive impact on that roster and seems to bring out the best in the guys around him with setting an example with the way that he plays, with his very vocal leadership style. I love PJ Tucker, and the 76ers are super lucky to have him.
By the way, John Wall is 31.
31. Okay.
Thanks to Verlad. Thanks to JJ. Great job. Thanks to Ramie out there in Milwaukee. We'll do this again tomorrow. Ramie in Milwaukee, myself here in Sacramento. And then we'll be off on Friday, back together after the holiday in the studio, all together, a happy family here in Sacramento. Everybody be good, be healthy, be safe. Should be a fun night. Should be a fun 24 hours. We'll have all of the NBA news for you tomorrow. Full show, 3 to 6. Cattles and Ramie, Sacktown Sports, 1140.